The last thing my first life gave me was the weight of my own keep coming down on my shoulders. A year of stone folding inward while the man I called my brother abandoned the ridge and let it happen. 240,000 of us woke at Lordfall that first morning. Every transmigrator handed a domain in a class, and I drew Keepright, the lord with 0 soldiers, dead last of all of them before a single war began. This time I opened my eyes on that same dawn, knowing the exact face that would betray me and the exact siege where he would do it. What I did not know was how a man who cannot field a single spear is supposed to live long enough to use that knowledge, because the first time around I died before I ever found out. So I suffered the same trap from the inside, mocked and rated and 1 bad hour from erased, until the morning I was cornered hard enough to force the worthless class past the one line every Keepright is quietly stopped at and found the thing the whole board and my own corpse had missed. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I am on my knees in red dirt, with my hands still braced over my head against a ceiling that is already gone. It takes me a long breath to understand the stone is not falling, that there is no stone at all, only a flat waste of rust-colored ground stretching to a bruised horizon. A voice with no warmth in it rolls down out of that sky and tells the Bonamark wastes that Lordfall is complete, that each survivor is now a lord of a domain, and it congratulates me on a new life with no acknowledgement that the old one just ended with my ribs caved in. My body answers wrong, too light, no broken weight pinning it, and the truth lands on me slower and heavier than the keep ever did. I am 29 years old, my name is Ju Hoyan, and I have done all of this before. The half-mechanical voice walks the rules through me the way it must be walking them through everyone. Every lord holds one domain with a node at its heart, and the node belongs to whoever's structures stand on it. Hold the node, take rivals' nodes in the domain war, or be erased. A lord's board ranks all of us by node count and domain power. Beside it, a lord's chat carries 5,000 voices to a region. My class assigns itself across the panel in front of me, and my stomach drops through the dirt because I already know what it says before the letters finish forming. Keepright. Garrison capacity, 0 soldiers. Construction unlocked. A warning printed plain underneath, that a lord who commands no troops cannot hold a contested node. Survival probability lowest on record. Build or be erased. My own panel is exactly the death sentence I remember. Level 1 Lord. Ju Hoyan. Strength 1. Constitution 1. Spirit 1. Garrison sits empty. Cavalry under it holds 0, and nothing on the whole sheet carries a blade. The only thing the class grants is the right to lay foundations and raise buildings from blueprints. Plain walls and plain towers, the orthodox stone I hid behind for a year before it killed me. My core stone reads at a thin trickle, the building mana that caps how much I can raise in a day, barely enough for a wall and a half. I drag my thoughts into the Lord's chat to check whether the knife is really in my back, and it is. The board has already found me. 5,000 voices in my region, and a good share of them are passing my name around. The 0 soldier lord, the wall boy, Keepright the useless, the one draw on the whole board that cannot field a single spear, and they are laughing the same laugh I died hearing. Here is the part that hollows me out worse than the mockery. I know things no one else in these 5,000 voices knows. 2 domains east, an army lord will send raiders at the soldierless newbies before the first noon, and I know it the way I know my own name. A charismatic, generous man will rise to the top of this region inside a month, and gather the first great alliance in my memory holds, to the hour. The siege where he pulls his army back and lets a ruin fall on me. I came back with the whole map of my first life folded in my skull. Every move up to the morning I died, and every page of it is worthless, because foreknowledge of a knife does nothing for a man with no hand to block it. The arena gave me the plot and kept the solution. I can see the death coming. Stopping it still needs a spear I will never have. So I do the only thing a Keepright knows how to do, the same thing that buried me. I steady my breathing, push the panic down where it cannot vote, and lay my first foundation on the rise above my node. The system answers with a clean, dumb satisfaction. Foundation laid, raise available, and I feed the trickle of core stone into it and watch a wall come up out of the dirt. Plain gray stone, 4 meters and solid. Exactly the kind of wall I trusted last time. As the wall locks into place, the memory takes me, and I let it, because I have learned the hard way that the ones I shove down come back at worse times. In the old world, I studied load paths for a living, a demolition and construction foreman who could stand under a structure and tell you where the weight wanted to go and what would happen if you cut the wrong member. One job, a low building going down on a tight schedule. The call was mine and the thing came apart a beat faster than I had said it would. Most of the crew got clear. One man on my line did not walk out, and I carried him out instead, and I have weighed every ceiling I have stood under since wondering whether I called it right. So I never wanted a fortress that merely refuses to fall. I wanted one that could pick its people up and carry them clear of the thing coming down. And that was the thing I failed to build once. I shake it off and keep raising, because grief does not garrison a node. Up comes a second wall to close the gap, then a low watchtower the system calls a watchspire, and the spend empties my core stone for the morning down to a stub. The structure is honest stone, a node held by the only thing a Keepright can put on it, and on the board my prosperity ticks up a single grudging point. Sport finds me at once, the chat turning a single point into a joke. One voice marvels that the wall boy has built a sandcastle. Another asks the region whether anyone has explained to Keepright the useless that you cannot stack rocks on a man and call it an army. A third, kinder one, tells me to run east and beg a real lord for protection before someone comes to collect. I have no protection to beg and no army to buy, so I do the last orthodox thing left on the list. Into the Lord's trade channel go the only things of value I can scrape together. A foundation blueprint I will not need, and a sliver of my morning's core stone. And I try to hire a blade, a mercenary lord's spare swordsman, anything with a hand on a hilt, to stand my wall when the raiders come. The market is thin, and the prices for soldiers are cruel to a man the whole board is written off. After a long ugly haggle I come away with exactly 2 hired blades, a pair of board sellswords loaned at a price that leaves me poorer than I started, and I station them on my wall and tell them, through the channel and not to their faces, that they hold the gap and nothing more. They take the contract already certain they will be paid for standing somewhere safe while the newbie dies. I stand on my own little rise behind plain stone, with 2 rented swords and a head full of a future I cannot spend. And I already know how this ends, because I am watching myself walk straight back into the grave I climbed out of an hour ago. The raiders come before noon, exactly when my memory swore they would, and the timing is the cruelest joke the day has played yet, because I called it right and it changes nothing. They crest the low ground east of my domain in a loose column, 30-odd soldiers under the banner of the Army Lord 2 domains over, who built his early rank by stopping the spearless newbies in his reach and harvesting their nodes before the protection most classes get can save them. Keepright gets no such grace. The warning on my panel said it plain. Lowest survival probability on record, and I am about to watch the system mean it. While they close, the Lord's chat turns the column on the regional map into entertainment. One voice announces that someone is finally collecting my sandcastle. Another bets a portion of core stone I fall before the raiders even reach the wall. A third asks, half serious, whether anyone has ever seen a Keepright survive a single raid, and the answer that comes back is a row of laughing voices, and one flat no. Underneath the mockery, the regional lord count is already sliding, the soft number the board keeps of who is still breathing, and it drops by 1s and 2s all morning, as the army lords across the wastes clear out the weak draws. Every tick is some other spearless fool dying the death waiting for me. My 2 hired blades read the same column I do and reach the only sane conclusion a paid man reaches. Through the channel, one of them tells me the contract was to hold a wall against a threat, not to die for a lord the board is already buried, and the other does not bother with words at all. Just pulls back off the parapet and starts walking my core stone cost in the direction of anywhere that is not here. I do not waste a message begging them. Loyalty bought with a sliver of mana evaporates the instant the swords outnumber the pay, because I bought exactly this kind of loyalty in my first life, and it walked off me at exactly this moment, on a bigger field with a brother's army instead of 2 sellswords. The shape never changes, only the scale of who leaves, so it is just me and the stone the way it always was. The raiders hit the wall, and the wall does what stone does when no one holds it. It stands there and waits to be taken. I feed my last stub of core stone into a third segment to close the flank they are working, and the system raises it true. But a wall with no soldiers on it is not a defense, it is a weight. They find the seam between my first 2 segments inside a few minutes, the kind of seam I would have spotted in the old world from 100 meters in a coffee, and they lever into it with a battering log they brought, because army lords always bring the tool for the spearless ones. The board narrates my death for the crowd in real time. A voice calls the breach, another counts how long the sandcastle held, and laughs that it is a regional record for shortest siege. The lord count ticks down again, somebody else's death, and I feel the whole thing closing exactly the way the keep closed on me last time. Slower only because there is less of it. This is the part the foreknowledge ruins. A blind lord in my place would only feel the panic of the moment, the immediate animal fear of armed men coming through his wall, and he could at least die surprised. I am not blind. My eyes reach past this raid to the alliance that forms next month, to the warm, generous brother I have not met yet, to the grave wall siege where the same betrayal that already killed me once is waiting to do it again. None of it matters, because I will not survive the morning to reach any of it. I have my whole first life loaded and ready, every move up to the siege that killed me, with no present to fire it from. The cruelty is total. I came back a prophet, and the prophecy is my own corpse, on schedule, twice. The first raider is over the breach and into my domain, and a second behind him, and they make straight for the node, because the node is the prize and a Keepright on it is barely an obstacle. I back toward my watchspire with nothing in my hands, my strength at 1 and change, my body the body of a foreman and not a fighter. The panel in my eye keeps offering the same useless menu it has offered all morning. Lay a foundation, raise a building, repair a building, the orthodox loop, the dead end, the exact set of verbs that killed me. I have spent every grain of core stone I had, so there is not even another wall to raise and die behind. The system has shown me the whole of what it claims a Keepright can do, and the whole of it adds up to a slower way to lose. A blade comes from me and I get my back to the cold stone of the watchspire and put my hand flat against its foundation, grabbing the nearest solid thing I can reach. And the future I came back with is no use to me at all in the 1 second I actually have. With my hand flat on the watchspire's foundation and a sword 2 steps from my throat, my mind does the one thing it has always done under a structure. It stops feeling and starts reading. I trace the tower down its load, the weight of it, where the mass wants to go, the line of stone running from the parapet through the core and into the footing where the system bolts it to the ground. Somewhere under the panic, a foreman's question surfaces that no keep right on the whole board has ever needed to ask. Not how do I make this stronger? Where does the foundation actually grip? And what happens if I pull it the wrong way? The menu in my eye says repair the building, raise the building, hold the building. None of those is what I want. The footing has to let go. So I claw at the system for a verb it has not shown me, push my will down the load line into the place where the tower meets the dirt, and I order the foundation to do the one thing every prompt and every keep right instinct insists a foundation can never do, which is move. The system balks, a line of refusal flashes, function not available, garrison required, and under it, fainter, a second response that does not say no, the kind of plastered over seam in a wall that no one was ever meant to read. I shove everything I have left into that seam, the last dregs of my will and the cold certainty I feel now that I have nothing else to try, and I tell the watchspire to take a step. It takes a step. The footing tears free of the red dirt with a groan that goes up through my arm and into my teeth, the whole tower lifting its base out of the ground it was bolted to. And one massive segment of stone swings forward and comes down a full body length closer to the breach, and the earth shakes when it lands. In front of me, the raider forgets entirely about my throat. He stares up at a 4-meter tower that has just walked toward him, and in the breath he wastes staring, the whole logic of the last 2 lives turns over inside my skull at once, total, and far too late to have saved the man it should have. An army eats, so it needs supply, and an army is paid, so it can be bought off or starved out. And worst of all, an army is afraid, so it routs the moment the math turns, and a routed army cannot hold a node. Every weakness that put a knife in my back runs through the soldiers, not the stone. Stone does not eat. Nobody bribes a wall, or starves it or frightens it into running. And a tower that can pick its own footing up and walk is the one thing on this board that can never ever be pinned, surrounded, or crushed in place. I died because I made my keep a thing that could be cornered when I was never supposed to hold ground. The whole point was to move it. A beat after I catch up to it, the system catches up to me, and a new line burns into the panel, the first thing this class has given me all morning that is not a death sentence. Function unlocked. Mobilize. Below it, the cost prints itself out cruel and honest. Mobilizing a structure spends core stone faster than anything the keep right can do, and I have none, which means I get exactly the steps I have already paid for and not one more, so I make them count. I do not hesitate, because hesitation is a soldier's flaw and I have no soldiers. Forward into the breach goes the watchspire on the dregs of my will, the tower striding slow and enormous, utterly without fear, straight into the cluster of raiders pouring through my wall. The first man does not get clear of the footing, and the tower simply walks through where he was standing. His 2 fellows scatter, and the column behind them, 30 soldiers who came to harvest a sandcastle, watch a building stand up and come for them. And the army lord's whole advantage, the thing that made spearless lords easy meat, evaporates the instant the wall stops waiting and starts hunting. They are men. Men break. The tower does not, and the tower is what is coming. Their line buckles, then folds, then runs, the army lord's raiders streaming back east faster than they came, and my watchspire stands in the wreck of my own breached wall on a node that is still mine. The board takes a full breath to understand what it just watched, and then it loses its mind. That same chat that narrated my death an hour ago is suddenly a wall of voices asking each other whether anyone saw what they saw, whether my tower moved, whether a keep right can do that. And the answer that comes back this time is not a flat no. It is confused, frightened, and very interested. One voice swears the building walked. Another tells him to stop drinking. A third, an army lord by the weight his name carries on the regional map, posts nothing at all and pulls his raiders home, and the silence from the strong ones is louder than the noise from the rest. The regional lord count has stopped dropping in my corner of the wastes, and on the board, the bottom draw is not last because he is helpless anymore. He is something the board does not have a category for yet. I stand the watchspire down before its hunger for core stone bankrupts me, and I sink into the red dirt with my back against its warm footing, while my hands shake now that they are allowed to. 2 lives I spent crouched behind stone waiting for stone to save me, and it never could. Because a thing that cannot move can always be cornered by a thing that can. The trash class was never trash. It was a key with the teeth filed off, mobility sealed behind a refusal screen, so the man holding it would die orthodox and never learn what he was carrying. Someone went to the trouble of hiding this. That someone made a mistake leaving a builder alive with the path still visible. I pull the future back out of my skull and lay it over the map, and now it is finally worth something, because now I have a hand to act with. My memory says the real scramble begins in the rust fields, the scrap wasteland on my western rim, a graveyard of pre-Lordfall wreckage where the materials a building needs to grow are lying in the open for whoever reaches them first, and where the army lords will be strip mining it bare within days. The foreknowledge is a wasting asset, sharp now and blurrier with every choice I make that my dead self never made, so I spend it while it still cuts. I gather what little I have, point the watchspire west toward the rust fields where my first life remembers the scramble for materials began, and take the first slow, certain step in the only direction a man who can move his walls has ever needed to go, which is forward. The watchspire walks west at the pace of a man wading uphill in mud, and I walk beside it because it cannot go faster, and I have nowhere I would rather be than under the first thing on this board that finally answers to me. Every step costs core stone I do not have to spare, so I let the watchspire rest more than it strides, using each pause to learn the ground. Red waste gives way to gray, then to a flat scab of broken country where the dirt has rusted to a dark iron stain, and the first wreck rises out of the haze ahead, a snapped tower of girders leaning on nothing. And my memory clicks the name into place before my eyes finish the shape. The rust fields, a scrap wasteland on the western rim, where the bones of whatever stood here before Lordfall lie in the open, for whoever reaches them first. My first life remembers this place as the start of the real scramble, and the memory is already softer than it was this morning, blurring at the edges the more I do that my dead self never did. The army lords will come for it because the materials a building needs to climb a tier are not in the dirt of a starter domain. They are here, scattered through the wreck, and within a few days this whole field will be picked to the rivets. I came early. That is the one advantage the foreknowledge still buys me, and I spend it fast, because spending it is the only way it pays. I stop the watchspire on a rise of slag, and take the field in with a foreman's eye, not as scenery but as load and material. The girders are pre-Lordfall steel, heavier and truer than anything the system hands a starter, and threaded through the rust I see the dull blue-gray gleam the system files under ferrocrete, the rare stuff the strong tiers eat, and a starter domain never produces. Closer in, half buried in a collapsed slab, a vein of core stone glows the soft trickle blue I have been starving on all morning. The whole field is a cache lying in plain sight, and the only reason it is not already gone is that I beat the rush by a day. I send the watchspire down off the slag to stand over the richest seam, and I climb into the wreck myself. Because a keeprag has no soldiers to send, and I have hauled scrap in a harder world than this one. Once I worked load paths for a living, in a life that ended with a ceiling on my shoulders, and a field of fallen structure is the one landscape I have always been able to walk without fear. My eye finds the members that came down clean, the ones still under tension, the slabs balanced so a wrong pull buries a man, and I take only the steel that wants to come free. Ferrocrete I pry out in flat blue plates and stack at the tower's foot. Core stone I draw straight up into the system, and at last my building man it climbs past a wall and a half and keeps going. The board finds me while the scaffold is still loading, the way it always does. The regional chat lights with a voice asking whether someone has tracked me into the rust fields, and another answers that the sandcastle has legs now. Did nobody hear? And a third, flatter and more careful, says only that the bottom draw is still alive 2 days past his expiration, and that is interesting. Under the noise, my hands keep working. My name on the board has turned from a joke into a question. Last Lord, the chat still types. The Lord who builds sandcastles, but the laugh under it has gone thin. Then the oldest play on the board walks up out of the haze to collect me. He comes with his structures, not his feet, because a lord moves that way when he wants you to count his garrison before he speaks. A squat keep slides into view on the next rise. Real walls, a real banner, and a column of bot soldiers fanning down toward the wreck I am stripping. The message reaches me through the regional channel rather than his mouth, and it is a script I have heard in 2 lives. He tells the new arrivals that this stretch of the rust fields is under his protection, that scavenging here without his leave is theft, and that a small standing tax in corestone and ferrocrete keeps a lord breathing in dangerous country. Then he names the tax. It is most of what I have just pulled. I know the shape of him before I know his name, because the board makes this man fresh every region. He holds no node anyone fought him for. The keep went up on the edge of a cache so he could charge the frightened newbies a toll on ground that was never his, and the soldiers behind him are rented the same week mine walked off my wall this morning. This is the scammer the chat warns about in the first hour and a half the channel pays anyway, because a frightened lord with no walls would rather buy a week of peace than test whether the threat is real. I am not frightened, and I have walls, and one of them can stand up and chase into the horizon, so I do not test the threat. Instead, I answer it the only way that teaches a lesson the board can read. Through the channel and not to his face, I tell him I am a builder and I pay my taxes in building. The wall I offer will go up on the line between his keep and my scavenge, a clean 4-meter span of orthodox stone, and the moment it stands he can take the ground behind it as his toll, and we are square. It is a humble enough offer to insult nobody, a soldierless lord buying off a stronger one with the one thing he can make, and he accepts it without a second thought. The toll already spent in his head. He tells the channel I have finally learned my place, tells his soldiers to stand easy, and moves his own keep up to the line to collect. I lay the foundation where he can watch, and I raise the wall true, and it comes up gray, solid, and exactly 4 meters, the orthodox stone I hid behind for a year before it killed me. What he cannot read, because he is not a foreman and never stood under a load in his life, is where I put the weight. I raise it with the grain of the stone running wrong, the footing set shallow on the downhill side, the whole span balanced on a single course that holds a wall standing in still air and lets go the instant anything leans its mass against the top. It is a sound wall to look at. To nobody who reads load paths is it a sound wall at all. He brings his keep against it to claim the ground, throwing weight to mark a thing as owned, which is what these men always do. The wall stands the first push, because it is built to. Then he leans his structure's full mass into the top course to shove the line another meter into my scavenge. Greedy passed the deal, and the span does the one thing I built it to do. The shallow footing kicks, the wrong grain course folds, and 4 meters of stone comes down across his own front in a slide of rubble that buries the toll he just collected, and pins his lead soldiers under a wall they watched me build for them. Nobody is killed, because I knew exactly how it would fall before I raised it, and I carry one collapse I did not call right and will never raise a second one on purpose. He is only humiliated, and on this board humiliation costs him more than a few crushed men ever would. The chat loses the thread of its own joke. A voice asks whether the extortion lord just got buried under a wall he extorted. Another says the tax was paid in full and fell on the collector. A third voice types only that I rigged a wall to fold on command. The scammer pulls his keep back off the line, his soldiers digging his toll out of the rubble, and he does not send me a second message, because the second message is the one the whole region is now waiting to laugh at. I let him go, since I gain nothing by chasing him while he is already paying me in full. With the field still mine, I finish loading the watchspire with ferrocrete and corestone, and the tower's footing groans full and ready under a haul it has never carried, and I pointed deeper into the rust fields, because the richest wreck is always the one nobody reached yet, and so is the worst trouble. Trouble announces itself the way it did the first time, as dust on the southern edge of the field where no lord should be moving at speed. My memory stirs before my eyes resolve it, a page I have not opened since I died, and the page says raiders run a survey caravan to ground in the deep rust fields on the second day, and a surveyor lord I never met dies under them because nobody reached her in time. In my first life, the somebody who failed to reach her was the whole region, busy stripping scrap. This life, the dust is 2 ridges off and I have a tower that walks. I push the watchspire south on the corestone I just pulled, and slow is the cruelest word in my vocabulary right now, because the tower wades and the dust closes and I can do nothing but feed it steps and read what is coming. Through the haze, the shape sorts itself. A line of low survey wagons strung between wrecks, banner unfamiliar, running flat out for the cover of a fallen span. Behind them, a loose pack of raiders on the open ground, a dozen soldiers under a lord who hunts the weak for sport. The same trade the Dawn Raiders ran on me, and they are running her caravan down because it cannot turn and fight. The lead wagon is already breaking apart at the wheel. I see her in the breath she stops running, and turns to buy her people the span. Up off the lead wagon she climbs onto a slab of fallen girder, a woman with a surveyor's long coat gone gray with road dust and a brass sighting glass still in one hand. Instead of fleeing, she plants her feet and reads the ground, calling a route to her caravan over her shoulder, sending them at the one gap in the wreck where the raiders cannot bring numbers to bear. She is buying them a minute with her own body, and she reads terrain well enough that the minute might even work, except a minute is not enough and she knows it. So she turns the brass glass on the raiders instead of running, marking them, doing the one thing a surveyor can do when the map runs out, which is see clearly the thing about to kill her. I give her the thing my memory never had. Down off the ridge I drive the watchspire into the raider pack from the flank they are not watching. 4 meters of loaded stone coming out of the haze where nothing should be standing at all. The first I learned about my own tower this morning, the thing a man learns only when cornered, was that the raiders forget everything else the instant a building stands up and walks at them. These do the same. The lord running her caravan down loses his whole formation in a heartbeat, his soldiers scattering off the path of a thing that does not bleed and cannot be turned, and the pressure comes off her line all at once. I walk the tower through where their charge was, slow and certain, utterly without fear, and a hunting pack that came to run down a soft target watches the target's rescue stand up out of the ground, and they break and run, men against a thing that does not, streaming back south faster than they came. The watchspire stands in the wreck over a survey caravan that is, this life, still breathing. Down off the girder she comes and crosses to me on foot, brass glass lowered, and there is no relief in her, none of the gratitude a saved lord owes a strong one. She studies the structure first, walking its base, mapping the dragged footing and the torn place where it ripped free of the slag, and only then does she study me. Through the channel, she tells me plainly that buildings do not move, that she has surveyed 40 domains and learned every class on the board, and a keepwright raises stone and stands behind it and dies. Then she asks me what I am. I tell her my name is Ju Hoyon, the draw the board mocks, and that the tower walks because I made it walk, and I leave the how out of it, because the how is the one thing on this board worth keeping to myself. She tells me her name is Seo Dane, a surveyor lord, and that the wreck I just pulled her out of was a mapping run, not a scavenge. Her domain power runs to sight rather than walls or swords, and she lays a little of it out for me to read, because a debt makes a wary lord generous. The survey reads the whole region for her, the weather coming, the node shifts under the board, where the wreck runs deep and where the army lords are massing, and, she says, where the rust fields stop being a scrap field and start being something with edges. She has a ferrocrete cache too, pulled from the deep wrecks her sight finds before anyone else reaches them. More of the blue plate than I have ever seen stacked in one place. and she watches my face when she mentions it, because a surveyor reads the man as easily as the ground. What neither of us says, and both of us understand, is that we are each holding exactly what the other cannot make. My walking tower is blind to where it should go, and now that I move my walls, I need a read on the country worse than I ever did standing still, and a map is the single structure I cannot raise. Her sight is wasted on a surveyor with no walls to keep the raiders off her wagons, because a clear read of the country does not stop a hunting pack from running you down, as the first life proved, and this one nearly did. The math is plain to both of us inside a minute, and neither of us offers a partnership out loud, because a debt declared is a debt that can be called, and we are both too careful for that. She charts, I carry. The arrangement names itself by happening. Before we move, she turns the brass glass on the field for me, and through her survey laid over my own blueprint site, I get the first real look at how the rust fields connect to the wider wastes. The scrap field is not a field. It is a basin, ringed by deep wreck, and the wreck does not lie where fallen structure should. Her sight shows the node lines under it running too straight, meeting at angles no collapse makes. And when I lay my own building site over hers, the wrecks stop looking like ruins at all. They resolve into the foundations of something that was raised once and then unmade. I keep the wrongness sealed behind my face because she is watching me and I am not ready to show her this. The deep wreck is where her cache sits and where the worst trouble waits, and we both know it, so we point my tower and her wagons at it together, the slow-walking stone and the fast blind sight, and we go in. Down in the deep wreck, the pay matches Dane's survey, a basin floor of fallen span and buried ferrocrete. I strip it into the watchspire while her wagons haul off her own cache and bind it to mine. And for an hour, the only sound is the work of two careful lords loading a tower that already groans under what it carries. Then her brass glass comes up sharp toward the southern rim, and she tells me the dust is back and bigger, and her sight counts it before mine can. 40 soldiers under the hunting lord I broke this morning. Come back with friends to take the cache and the surveyor and the walking freak all in one bill. This is the push I cannot walk away from. One tower broke a dozen raiders with surprise and a flank. But surprise is spent now, and 40 soldiers who have been told a building stands up do not scatter the second time. They come on in a proper line, spreading wide so the watchspire cannot face them all, working toward Dane's wagons on the basin floor where her sight cannot save her and her cache cannot fight. I feel the morning closing again, the slow certainty of a thing that reads the whole death coming and has too little to spend on stopping it. My core stone is half what it was. One walking tower against a real line is a wall waiting to be gone around. So I do under this pressure what I did under the last, which is claw the system for a verb it has not shown me. My hand goes flat on the watchspire's footing with the ferrocrete I stripped all day stacked at its base, and I go back over the load, the tower, the blue plate, and the fallen span we are standing in. 3 structures that the system files as 3 separate things. Under the fear, the foreman's question surfaces. The one it always surfaces. Not how do I make the tower stronger, because the tower alone is not enough, and I have run out of room to raise a second one beside it. The real question is whether the system insists these are 3 things at all, or whether that is only another wall someone plastered over, so the man holding the key would never lean on it. I shove my will down into the seam between the tower and the ferrocrete and the buried span, and I order them to stop being 3. The refusal screen throws itself up the way it did this morning, and behind it the same plastered over place that does not quite say no. I put my last core stone, and the cold certainty of a man with nothing else to try against it, and I tell the 3 structures to become one. They fuse. The ferrocrete plates fold into the watchspire's frame. The buried span heaves up out of the basin floor to take its place as a footing wider than the tower ever stood on. Steel into stone into steel. Thickening and squaring, the whole mass climbs from a tower into a wall with a keep at its heart. 4 meters become 8. A single span become a structure that holds a node and a surveyor's wagons both inside its shadow. A beat after I catch up to it, the system catches up to me, and a new line burns into the panel. Function unlocked. Fuse. Combine standing structures into a stronger whole. Cost and core stone and ferrocrete both. Under it the tier names itself. Wall keep. And then climbs again as the last of the ferrocrete folds in, and it reads my first walking keep. Fortified, footed wide, slow, enormous. Built to take a line instead of break a pack. I walk it into the raiders line on the dregs of everything I have. A tower surprises a man. The walking keep comes for him as a fortress, and the difference is the whole story. Their spread line tries to slide around the flank a wall would give them. This wall is too wide to flank and walks faster at the seam than men can run from it, and it strides through the center of their formation and splits it clean. The half stranded on the basin floor finds Dane's wagons are now inside the keep's shadow, behind its footing where no soldier can reach them. Their lord throws his whole line at the structure, the same greedy shove the extortion lord spent on my rigged wall, and a walking keep does not fold on command, because this one I built to hold. The line buckles, folds, and runs. The second route I have driven into the same pack in one day, and my first walking keep stands in the deep wreck of the rust fields over a ferrocrete cache and a surveyor's caravan. On a node, the board still ranks dead last. Dane reads the keep, walking its new footing. Through the channel she tells me she has surveyed 40 domains and never once charted a structure that grows by eating other structures. And she asks again, more quietly, what I am. This time I do not answer, because I have just seen the thing I am not ready to be asked about. When the fuse settled, Blueprint's sight opened the keep's evolution tree to me the way it always shows a building's next rungs. The path up through Striding Citadel and on toward names I do not have yet. The tree is clean and bright except for one branch. One limb of it is sealed, walled off behind a refusal the system will not let me look through. And the wrongness coming off that branch is the exact wrongness I felt this morning when I told the foundation to walk and it answered from behind a plastered over seam. It is the same hand. Somebody built this class with a door in it and then bricked the door over. Mobilize was on the other side, and Fuse was on the other side, and whatever's behind that sealed branch is on the other side too, and the basin around me, with its two straight node lines and its wrecks that resolve into unmade foundations, is somehow part of the same sentence. None of it makes sense to me yet. I lock it away beside the seam under the tower and say nothing to Dane, because an unfinished answer is not a thing you hand to anyone, not even the Lord who just trusted you with her sight. She brings the brass glass up instead and charts the next leg, because that is the arrangement and neither of us names it. Her survey reads the country east of the rust fields, the node shifts and the massing she sees before the board does, and she tells me what my decaying memory was already telling me. The first great alliance of the region is gathering at a ruin called Gravewall, an army block forming under one lord who is pulling the strong draws to him faster than anyone, the warm and generous kind of man everyone wants at his back. My memory hands me the name before her survey finishes the shape of it, and the name is one I have carried through 2 lives in a year of stone coming down. Kang Syoko, the brother I have not met yet in this life, the friend I trusted last time, the army that pulled back at the siege and let the walls fall on me. She does not know any of that, and I do not tell her. I only point my walking keep east, toward Kang Soko, the slow-loaded fortress waiting out of the rust fields, with the surveyor's wagons in its shadow and a Farrow Creek cache in its footing. Then I take the first step toward Gravewall, where the strongest lord in the region is building the alliance that killed me, and where this time I will be the one who arrives knowing how the story ends. Gravewall rises out of the eastern haze long before my walking keep can reach it, a black scarp of broken towers older than Lorefall, and the alliance camped along its skirt is the first thing in either of my lives that has made me want to turn the fortress around and walk it the other way. My memory hands me the shape of the place before my eyes finish it. The ruins' dead spires, the tents and raised keeps of 40 lords spread under them, the banners of the strong draws all leaning toward one center. Dane reads it through her brass glass from the wagon beside me, and tells me plainly that whatever is gathering here is the largest concentration of domain power her survey has charted since Lordfall, and she asks, careful as ever, whether I am sure I want to walk a single slow tower into the middle of it. I tell her yes, and I leave the reason out, because the reason is the one thing on this board I cannot hand to anyone. That the man at the center of all those banners is the man who killed me. The block reacts to my arrival all at once and loud. By the time my keep wades within sight of the outer tents, the regional chat has already found me, and the wall of voices does the thing it has done in every region. It laughs first and looks second. One lord types that the sandcastle has dragged itself to a real lord's gathering, since a man with no soldiers cannot possibly belong at a war council. Another asks the channel whether someone should explain to Keepright the useless that an alliance is built out of armies and he has brought a rock. A third, an army lord by the weight his name carries, says only that the Freak's Tower walks, and that he would like to see it before he decides whether it is a joke or a problem. The laugh under the chat has gone thin in my corner of the wastes, the way it went thin in the rust fields, and I let it stay thin, because a board that cannot decide whether to mock me or fear me is a board that has run out of ways to predict me. I stand the keep down on the Alliance's outer rise, where its footing groans into the dirt and its shadow falls over Dane's wagons, and I wait, because the strong always come to the curiosity rather than the other way around. The wait is short. He comes on foot, which tells me everything about him before he opens the channel. Every other lord in this camp moves behind a wall of bought soldiers, counting their garrison out for me to see the way the extortion lord counted his in the rust fields. The man crossing the open ground toward my keep brings nothing but himself and 2 unarmed aides, and he does it because he is strong enough that walking up to a stranger unguarded is its own kind of show of force. I know the walk before I know the face, and then the face resolves out of the haze and lands on me with the full weight of 2 lives at once. Kang Syoko, broad through the shoulders, easy in how he carries himself, a smile already up before he is close enough to use it, and not one line of him is changed from the man who walked his army back over a ridge and watched my keep come down on top of me. I do not let my face move. Once I kept load path straight under collapsing structures with men dying 10 meters off, and holding a still face while my heart tries to climb out of my throat is a smaller thing than that. Barely. He reaches the foot of my keep and tips his head back to take in all 8 meters of it, and he laughs. But the laugh is not the chat's laugh. It is warm and genuinely delighted, the laugh of someone who has just found something rare and is happy about it. Through the channel, because even a lord this strong reports rather than shouts across a war camp, he tells me he has heard 3 different stories about a keepright whose buildings move and dismissed all 3, and that he is glad he came to look himself, because the stories undersold it. He introduces himself the way generous men do, which is by giving first. Before I have said a word back, he tells me his name, tells me he runs the alliance gathering under Gravewall, and tells me that any lord whose structure can stand up and walk into a line is a lord he wants inside his block, rather than outside it. There is no threat in it, and no tax named. He offers, and the offer is exactly the offer my memory says he made the first time, dressed in the same warmth that the alliance protects its own, that a soldierless lord is a dead lord alone but a valued lord under a banner, and that my walls are worth 10 men who only hide behind theirs. The block could use a builder, he tells me. He offers it as a gift, and in his head it is one, because King Soko has never once in either of my lives understood that the thing he is offering is a leash. The cruelty of the moment is total, and it is a cruelty only I can feel, because I am the only person at Gravewall who knows what this is. This man smiling up at my keep and calling me valuable is the man who will pull his army back at this exact ruin and let its defenders crush me into the dirt to take a node. He does not know that yet. In this timeline he has not betrayed me, has not even decided to, because the decision is months and a siege away, and the warmth on his face is not a mask over the knife, it is real, which is the part that has always been worse. The first time I mistook the warmth for the whole man. This time I know the warmth and the knife are the same man, that he can mean every generous word and still walk his army back when the math turns, and I have to stand at the foot of my own fortress and smile at the brother I trusted, knowing both halves of him at once. So I play along, because playing along is the correct move and I am done making incorrect ones. I tell him, through the channel and in the flat builder's register the board expects from me, that a soldierless lord knows exactly what he is worth and exactly what he is not, and that an alliance that wants walls has come to the right freak. The dryness reads to him as modesty, which is the point. There is no hard haggle from my side, because haggling hard signals a lord with options, and a man at the bottom is supposed to have none. Let Kang believe he is collecting a useful novelty at a fair price, a wall builder for his army, the handy keepwright who will throw up parapets for real soldiers to stand on. Because every hour he spends believing that is an hour he spends underestimating the one lord at Gravewall who already watched him win. There is a second reason I take his offer, and it is the colder one. The alliance is the single best seat in the region from which to watch the man who betrays me. Outside the block I stay a curiosity he might court or might crush. Inside it I attend his war councils, measuring his strength, his allies, the shape of his plans, gathering with my own eyes the intelligence my decaying memory can no longer refresh. Because every choice I make that my dead self never made blurs another page of the future. My foreknowledge told me Kang gathers an alliance at Gravewall. It did not tell me which 40 lords, or how many soldiers, or where the army block is thin, and those are the things that keep a man alive at a siege. The closest place to learn them is at Kang's own table, so I take the seat at the table and I smile across it at the man I call brother, and I let him think the smile is gratitude. He claps a hand to the keep's footing as he turns to go. A proud owner's pat on a thing he has just bought, pleased with himself, already telling the channel that I am one of his now, and that anyone who is laughing should come watch what a walking wall does to a siege line. The chat shifts under his weight, the mockery folding into speculation, a few voices already asking whether the freak's tower is going on the Alliance's front rank. I watch King Soko walk back across the open ground to his army, unguarded, unhurried, certain of everything, and I think that the first time I would have walked after him grateful, and that this time I will walk after him counting. Inside the block I become exactly what Kang thinks I am, a quiet builder who throws up walls where he is told and otherwise keeps to himself. And the disguise costs me nothing, because it is also the truth and also the perfect cover for the only work that matters. I raise parapets for his soldiers in a forward keep on the Alliance's western flank, plain orthodox stone, the dead-end building I hid behind for a year. And while my hands lay foundations, my eyes do the real labor. I learn which lords command real armies and which are leaning on Kang's, clock where the block's strength sits and where it only looks like strength, then file the names of the 40 so my decaying memory can be replaced by a map drawn from my own eyes. Dane works the same field from the other side. Her survey covers the country the block is gathered in, the node shifts under Gravewall, the weather coming off the ruin, a deep wreck where the Alliance has not yet thought to dig, and through the channel she feeds me what her brass glass finds while I tell her where the walking keep can carry her wagons safely. The arrangement has hardened from the wary thing it was in the rust fields into something with weight to it. She has started telling me what she sees before I ask. Lately she leaves the most useful findings for last, to watch my face when I hear the best of it. I have started routing my keep an extra hour out of its slow way to put her wagons inside its shadow before the weather she charts arrives, and neither of us mentions that either. The contrast lands hardest at the war councils, where Kang's easy trust sits on one side of me, and Dane's wary trust stays at my back, and I am the only man in the tent who knows which of the two is the knife. Kang likes me. That is the plain and terrible fact of it. He likes me the way he liked me the first time, because I am useful, dry, a builder who does not flatter him, and he has decided, with the whole open warmth of a man who has never had to doubt his own generosity, that I am his. Dane does not like me yet, not exactly. She trusts me only as far as she has tested me herself, and that trust is worth 100 of Kang's. The man courting me is the one who will kill me. and the woman testing me is the one who never will. There is a reason the warm kind fooled me the first time, and it surfaces at the council the way the collapse surfaced at my first raise, and I do not push it down. In my first life, early before the alliance and the betrayal, I was a soldierless lord drowning the same way I am drowning now, and King Soko was the one lord on the whole board who sat down beside me instead of laughing. There was a night a stronger lord meant to crush my little domain and take my node, and Kang put his own army between us, unasked, and told the board I was under his banner and that anyone who wanted the rock could come through King Soko first. Nobody came. He did not charge me for it. The man spent real soldiers and real standing to keep a useless draw alive, and he did it grinning, and in that moment I would have laid my keep down in front of his army without a second thought. Because someone who shields you when you are worth nothing has bought something that cannot be bought back. That is the memory that makes the smile across this table cost me. He was not pretending then. The shield was real, so was the knife. Later. The hardest thing my first death ever taught me is that both can be true of the same man, and that the shield is exactly what makes the knife land. I put the memory where the rest of the future goes and turn my face back to the table because a debt King has not yet earned back in this life will not hold a single node, and nodes are the only currency this table pays in. The block tests me before Kang ever marches it anywhere, and the test wears the face of a rival inside Kang's own tent. There is an army lord in the alliance who does not like that the strongest man in the region has taken a shine to a wall builder, and he likes it less when Kang assigns the contested western node to me to hold rather than to him. The node sits on a low hill between the alliance's camp and a neutral lord's domain, ground both blocks want and neither has claimed. Kang gives it to me as a courtesy, half a test and half a gift, telling the council that he wants to see the famous walking wall do something useful before the real siege. The rival hears a freak-handed a job that should be his. Through the channel, loud enough for the whole block, he says I will lose the node inside a day, and the moment I lose it, the rival will take it, and a lesson both. Kang lets the challenge stand, smiling certain of his new toy. The rival masses his soldiers on the neutral side, ready to walk in the instant my undefended hill falls, and the chat scents blood and gathers to watch. The old joke warming back up around a sandcastle that should fold as soon as real boots reach it. The shape is familiar enough to taste. The whole block lined up to watch a keep right fail at holding ground without a single spear. This time I am not cornered into a discovery I do not have. This time I know what my buildings can do, and an underestimation that deep is the most expensive thing a rival can carry uphill. I walk my keep onto the contested hill and lay it down over the node, footing wide, shadow long, and then I do the thing no lord in the block has ever seen a node held by, which is nothing. The walking keep sits over the node and lets the whole alliance watch contested ground belong to stone, and the board does not understand what it is looking at. My system answers the question the board cannot. As my keep's footing settles over the node, a line prints into my panel, node held, garrison sufficient. The structure itself satisfies the rule. The function names itself as it locks in, garrison null. My rival comes uphill the way he promised, his soldiers in a proper line, certain the undefended hill is his the moment he reaches it, and the node does not change hands. His men hit the keep's walls, and this time there is no ridge seam, no flank a soldier can slip, no body on the hill whose death changes ownership. They throw themselves at 8 meters of fused stone and ferrocrete, and the node-held line stays lit through every push until the whole assembled block watches the rival's math turn on him. You cannot rout a building. The block watches a keep right hold ground no soldier stands on, and the watching changes something in the camp. The chat that came to laugh goes quiet first, then confused, then loud in a new register. The sound of strong lords realizing the joke is on the wrong man. A side lord at the edge of the block admits through the channel that he has spent his standing feeding garrisons while I am holding a contested hill with stone alone. Another asks how many nodes a man could hold if every node cost him a building instead of men. The quiet that follows is worth more than the noise. The rival breaks before his soldiers do. He has staked his standing on taking the hill in a day, and he cannot afford to bleed an army wide against a wall while the whole block watches the odds turn, so he pulls his line back down with the node still lit on my panel, and the lesson landing on him instead of me. I do not chase him. His payment is already made, the whole alliance watching him fail to take the hill. The reward for holding lands a beat after the rival quits, the way the system always catches up to me a step late. The keep took damage during the push, cracked courses and torn footing I had braced to patch with core stone I could not spare. I do not have to. The panel writes it, function unlocked, auto repair, and the wounds close in front of 40 lords, stone drawing itself back into true, while the hill remains mine. By the time the last crack seals, the block has stopped treating me as Kang's strange new toy. The standing I earn on that hill is real, and it is the first real standing either of my lives has handed a keep right. Kang contacts me before the chat has finished recalculating, and his warmth has gone up a full degree. Delighted past courtesy now, telling me he knew the walking wall was worth a seat at his table, and that he was right to take the freak in over his own army lord's objection. He tells the block the western node is mine, and that the man who challenged for it can keep his soldiers for the real war. Then he tells me the thing I came to Gravewall to hear him say, and he says it as a gift, and it is the precise gift that killed me the first time. The Alliance is going to march on Gravewall's ruined fortress, the haunted black scarp at the center of everything, where a node worth the whole region sits behind defenses no single lord has cracked. And Kang Soko wants my walking keep at the vanguard. He says it grinning, generous, certain he is honoring his new builder with the place of honor, telling the council that a wall that walks and holds ground no soldier can hold belongs at the front of the line where it breaks the siege open for the armies behind it. The man has no idea what he is doing. In his head, he is rewarding me. To my memory, the vanguard at the Gravewall siege is the exact position where last time the ruins defenders closed on me, and the army I trusted pulled back from the ridge and let the walls come down on my shoulders, and the Lord assigning me that position now with a smile as the man who will pull back then. I take it. Through the channel in the dry flat register he has decided is modesty, I tell Kang that the vanguard is where a builder does the most good, and I let him hear it as gratitude. Every hour he spends thinking he has honored me is an hour he spends not knowing that I walk into this seat on purpose, to this position, for this siege. The first time I marched to Gravewall, a grateful man who did not know he was already dead. Now I point my walking keep at the black ruin at the center of the block, with the surveyor's wagons in its shadow, auto repair knitting its walls, and a node held by no soldiers at my back. The fortress wades toward the siege that killed me, slow and certain under my hand, because this time I am the one who arrives knowing exactly how it is supposed to end, and exactly how I am going to change it. The march on Gravewall's ruined fortress opens at first light, and the whole block moves exactly as my memory swore it would, which is the cruelest reassurance the day has to offer. 40 lords roll their armies down off the skirt toward the black scarp, banners leaning toward Kang Syoko at the center, and my walking keep wades out ahead of all of them at the vanguard. He gave me that place of honor with a grin. It is the exact stretch of ground where the scarp's defenders closed on me before, and the man I trusted left the ridge. I have stood at this line once already. The difference is that back then I did not know I was standing on my own grave. And this time, I picked the spot myself. Dane reads the scarp through her brass glass from the wagon inside my keep shadow and tells me what her survey finds, and none of it is good. That black scarp is older than Lordfall, a stack of dead towers and broken spans that the Alliance has been calling a ruined fortress for a month. Her sight reads the defenses around its central node as the densest she has charted, a slaughter floor of fallen stone and narrow approaches where numbers count for nothing, and the defenders fight from positions no army can flank. She asks me, careful as ever, whether I am sure the vanguard is where a man wants to be when that ground opens up. I tell her it is exactly where I want to be, and I leave the reason out, because the reason is the one page of my memory I will not hand to anyone, that the vanguard at this siege is the position the betrayal was built around. What lives inside it is the second half of Dane's bad news. The defenders are not lords. They are the scarp's own things, gray armored shapes that hold the broken towers and pour out of the spans when the approach is pressed. Her glass cannot count them because they do not register as soldiers on the board at all. They show as part of the structure, much as the wrecks in the rust fields showed as foundations instead of ruins. My memory hands me the same wrongness. Last life I marched here too busy dying to wonder why those things fought as architecture defends itself. But the foreman in me clocked it even then, and clocks it again now, that this place does not behave as a fortress someone holds. It behaves instead as a fortress holding itself. I keep the wrongness with the rest and take the field as work, because today the plan has to earn 2 lives at once. The Alliance's plan is the plan my memory remembers. Simple, brutal, built on the assumption that the vanguard is expendable. My keep goes in first to break the outer defenses, to soak the killing ground and crack the narrow approaches open so the armies behind me can pour through to the central node. The walking wall is the battering ram, the piece this plan is built to spend. Kang assigned me the front because a wall that holds ground no soldier can hold is, to a generous man who does not know what he is, the obvious thing to throw at a wall no army can crack. He is even right about the building. Where he goes wrong is on what happens to the builder. So I do the job, because doing the job is the cover and also the truth, and I cannot invert a betrayal I refuse to walk into. I drive the walking keep up the first approach into the outer ring, 8 meters of fused stone and ferrocrete wading into a slaughter floor that has broken every army sent at it, and the scarp answers the way my memory promised. The gray shapes pour out of the broken spans, fast, silent, more of them than her glass could count, and they come at my keep harder than anything before, not to rout it, because they cannot be routed any more than my walls can, but to take it apart course by course. They climb the footing. Levering into the seams, they fight my fortress as I would fight a fortress, reading its load and working the joints. And now I am facing defenders who understand structure as well as I do. The outer ring is close enough to my old death that my body knows it before my head does. This is where the gray things pinned my orthodox keep against the black stone and held me there for the betrayal to land. A static keep dies in this place because it can only stand and be taken apart. Mine did exactly that before, slow and total, and the last thought under the falling stone was that I had built the wrong thing again. I will not let the memory pin me the way this place means to. The gray shapes work my seams, and I let them work, because auto repair is knitting the courses closed almost as fast as they tear them. The function I earned holding a hill in front of the block now earning its keep in front of an enemy that fights to pull a building apart. Damage comes faster than the mending, but not by much, and not fast enough to take me before the job is done. I walk the keep deeper into the outer ring on the dregs of my core stone, breaking the narrow approaches open one at a time, soaking the slaughter floor with my fortress so the armies behind me have a clean lane to the center. The vanguard is doing exactly what the vanguard was assigned to do. Under my walls, the outer defenses crack open, the approaches widen, and the path to the central node lies bare for the block to pour through. The block does not pour through. Behind me, the armies that were supposed to follow my keep into the cracked open approaches are holding at the mouth of the slaughter floor. 40 lords worth of soldiers watching the lane open and not taking one step into it. While the gray things tear at my walls, and Dane's voice goes tight in the channel, the chat catches the betrayal one beat behind me. One lord asks why the vanguard is going in alone. Another says I am doing the blocks bleeding for it, and someone should tell me. One more voice says only that the walking wall is breaking the ruin open beautifully, and the armies behind it have gone very still. Underneath all of it, the regional lord count ticks, and the betrayal stands one ridge back, exactly where it stood the first time, and exactly on schedule. Kang springs it exactly as he sprang it before, and watching him do it on schedule is a thing I will carry into whatever life comes after this one. His army holds the high ground a ridge back, the largest force in the block, the spine the other 39 were leaning on, and at the moment my keep is deepest in with the gray things working every seam of it. He pulls. Not a retreat anyone could call cowardice. A withdrawal, clean and ordered, his line stepping back off the slope in the shape of a lord, repositioning for a second push, and the 39 armies leaning on his spine fold back with him because a block that loses its strongest center loses its nerve, and an army that loses its nerve loses the field. The whole alliance peels away from the mouth of the killing ground in the space of a few breaths, and the lane my keep cracked open for them empties of everyone but me. His withdrawal cuts through the dust, and I know every meter before it happens. The first time, I spent my last minutes believing Kang Seoko would turn back once he regrouped, because the alternative was too ugly to name while the walls were falling. This time, the decision sits plain under the maneuver. Not one soldier of his is coming back into this lane. The keep right is supposed to die here so the node comes free for the man who pulled back to take it. The scarp closes the moment the armies leave the field. Gray shapes pour out of the broken spans to finish the one structure still in reach, piling onto the footing, levering into seams, climbing faster than auto repair can seal. My panel lights with damage faster than mending. The central node sits bare 100 meters up the cracked approach, and the only thing between it and King Soko's withdrawn army is the trap he built around my corpse. This is the breath I came back to survive. The siege, the position, the withdrawal, the closing, the man on the ridge, all of it arrives on schedule, but I am not inside the old dead keep anymore. The chat catches up, voices saying the vanguard is pinned. The alliance has hung me out. The sandcastle is finally coming down for good. Dane's careful flat voice says only that Kang Soko pulled his whole army off a siege the instant his vanguard was committed, and that the timing is worth remembering. Dane's voice comes through the channel under all of it, not tight now but flat and certain, telling me the armies are not regrouping, that her survey reads no second push forming anywhere in the block's lines, that whatever just happened was not a maneuver. She does not say the word betrayal, and she does not have to, because a surveyor who reads node shifts before the board does, has read this one. The look on her face when I glance at the wagon in my keep shadow is the look of a woman who has just understood that the man at the center of all those banners decided to spend her partner. Very quietly, she asks me what I want her to do. I tell her to keep her wagons inside the footing and trust the walls, and I leave the rest out, because the rest is the thing I have been carrying toward this breath since the morning I woke. Here's what Kang Seoko does not know. The one thing the betrayal was never built to survive. The gap in a plan that worked perfectly the first time, because back then it was true. The trap is built to pin a keep. Every piece of it, the killing ground, the committed vanguard, the withdrawn army, the defenders closing in, all of it depends on the one fact that made it lethal before and that every lord on the board still believes about me. A keep holds ground. Pinned, surrounded, cut off from its supporting army, it stands where it is and is taken apart, because a keep cannot do anything else. That is what a keep is. Last life, that was exactly what I had, and so the trap closed on a thing that could not leave, and I died on schedule in a structure that had nowhere to go. I do not have a keep. I have a walking keep, and that difference is everything. The scarp closed its jaws on a static keep last time and crushed it. This time the jaws are closing on stone already stepping out from between them. The only man at Gravewall who does not yet understand is the man who just left the ridge. Certain as before, that he has watched me die. I walk the keep out of the closing jaws on the dregs of my core stone, and the entire shape of the siege flips in the breath it takes to do it. The gray things have packed themselves against my footing to take the structure apart, certain it cannot leave. And when the footing tears free of the killing ground and the fortress strides forward, the ones clinging to it fall and the ones in front of it are simply where the wall is going. A pinned keep is a thing being crushed. One that strides out of the pin is a battering ram with 100 enemies stacked in front of it, and I drive 8 meters of fused stone and ferrocrete straight up the cracked approach I opened for an army that never came. through the gray things, toward the bare central node Kang withdrew to claim. Then I flipped the line, because the node is not the prize today, the node is the bait, and the prize is the man on the ridge. Instead of holding the center, I turn my keep in the killing ground and drive it the other way, back down the approach and across the slope, and I heard the gray defenders ahead of it. The gray things follow the moving structure as they followed it into every seam, because the fortress is the threat their architecture answers to, and because my fortress walks, I decide which way that answer goes. I push it at Kang Soko's exposed flank. That withdrawn army stepped back off the slope to let the defenders crush me, which means the defenders are between me and them, which means when I drive the defenders off the floor, I am driving them straight into the soft, unguarded side of a block that has turned its back on the siege. His betrayal recoils onto its author exactly as he built it to land on me. Kang's army pulled back to spend the vanguard and inherit a clean node, and now the vanguard is walking, and the killing ground he abandoned me to is emptying itself into his flank. Hundreds of the gray things pour out of the broken spans after my moving keep and hit a withdrawn line that was facing the wrong way and braced for nothing. His soldiers, the spine the entire block leaned on, take that charge in the side with no wall in front of them, and no warning, because their lord was watching a man die and not watching the field. The line that held the high ground so cleanly a minute ago buckles where the gray things hit it, and the 39 armies leaning on Kang's spine feel it buckle and break. All at once, the route running back through the block faster than Kang's withdrawal ran forward. I take the node while he is bleeding. With the defenders driven off the killing ground and into Kang's flank, the central approach lies open and undefended. The node Kang withdrew his entire army to inherit sitting bare at the top of it, and I walk my keep up the cracked lane and set its footing down over the thing the betrayal was supposed to buy him. The panel lights the same flat way it lit on the contested hill. Node held. Garrison sufficient. This node is the one worth the whole region, the prize at the center of the scarp that no single lord ever cracked, and it is held now by a lord with 0 soldiers standing in the wreck of the army that came to watch him die. The scarp is mine now that I hold its heart, and the real prize was hiding under the node all along. With my keep's footing settled over the center, my blueprint site opens the place to me as it opens any structure, and the black ruin becomes a load path, the enemy's fortress become mine to take apart. The gray defenders were architecture defending itself because this whole place is architecture. Pre-Lord fallen built, not fallen. The same 2 straight bones I clocked under the rust fields wearing the shape of a fortress instead of a field. And a structure I hold is a structure I can take. I pushed my will down into the foundations as I pushed it into the seam under the watchspire, and I order the ancient thing to come into my keep, as I told 3 structures to become one, and the architecture answers, because it speaks the language my hands know. Absorb. The word names itself across my sight as the scarp begins to fold into my fortress. Ferrocrete older than anything the system hands a lord pouring up out of its bones. The pre-Lord fall stonework binding into my walls. The broken towers and narrow spans collapsing inward and rising again as part of the structure I command. My keep climbs past the tier it has carried since the rust fields. The footing widens past anything a walking keep stood on. Sub-towers rise out of the new mass at the corners, the whole thing squaring and climbing into a fortress that carries its own smaller fortresses on its back. And a line burns into my panel cruel and bright, tier unlocked. Striding citadel. Under it, the tier names itself. The next rung past the walking keep, a fortress on legs with its own walls inside its walls. Raised not from core stone I scraped, but from a pre-Lordfall ruin I walked out of a trap to take. The board does not narrate my death this time. It loses its mind the way it lost it the morning my tower first walked. Except louder, because now it is not a curiosity, it is watching. It is the strongest lord in the region face down in his own broken alliance. Voices that came to bury me cannot agree on what they saw. The one who finally says it plain is the side lord who watched me hold the contested hill. An army lord who has spent his whole standing on soldiers he has to feed, pay, and pray do not run. Through the channel, for the whole region to see, he says it. Kang Seoko withdrew his entire army to let the scarp crush the last ranked keepright and take the node. And that same keepright walked out of the trap, drove the defenders into Kang's flank, broke the strongest block in the region, and took the node himself. He does not know what I am anymore, but it is not a builder of sandcastles. Another asks how a man wins a siege he was supposed to die in. The careful flat voice says only that the keepright did not win the siege, that he was the siege, and goes quiet. And the quiet from that one is the loudest thing on the board. Kang's message lands before the dust settles, and the warmth is gone. I have waited 2 lives to feel it go, and it goes the way I knew it would, all at once and complete. The generous delight of the man who clapped my keep's footing in a proud owner's pat, replaced by something flat and very still. He does not pretend the withdrawal was a maneuver, because his flank is in ruins and the whole region saw the timing, and a man as strong as Kang Soko does not waste a lie the board has already seen through. What he says is the first honest thing he has ever given me across 2 lives. He does not understand how I knew, he tells me, and he will. There is no warmth left in it to mistake for anything. For the first time in either life, Kang Seoko looks at me and sees an enemy, and the brother I called brother is gone, and I find that I have been ready for this since the morning I came back, and I feel almost nothing. which is its own kind of grief. I stand my striding citadel down over the node that killed me, and I let the shake come into my hands at last, on the exact ground where the first life ended. Dane crosses to me on foot through the settling dust, brass glass in hand, and she does not ask me what I am this time, because she has stopped needing the answer and started understanding it. Walking the new footing, tracing the absorbed ruin folded into my walls, she tells me through the channel that she charted 40 domains and never once saw a lord turn his own execution into a coronation, and then she stops, because her glass is caught on something under the scarp and her voice changes. She turns the brass glass on the ground where the ruin used to stand, the bare killing floor my citadel walked the betrayal off of, and her survey finds the thing my blueprint site has been circling since the rust fields without a name for it. There is a seam under Gravewall, a deep edge where the node shifts stop behaving as a world should, and start behaving as the join between built things. My own site catches the same line. It is not a fortress or a field. It is bigger than either, and it runs deeper than her survey has ever charted. I point my striding citadel away from the broken alliance, toward the open wastes and the bare ground where Dane's glass marks the seam, because the man who hunts me now will need time to gather what is left of his block, and I do not intend to be at Gravewall when he does. The fortress wades out across the killing floor, a pre-Lordfall ruin folded into its walls, and a node worth the whole region held by no soldiers at its back. The betrayal that killed me twice is behind me now, and the edge Dane found under the scarp is the first thing in 2 lives to frighten me worse than Kang Soko ever did. I have learned across both of them that whatever the board hides hardest is the thing most worth standing on. The bare killing floor under Gravewall is where Dane's glass keeps stopping, so I set my striding citadel's footing down over the spot where her survey marks the seam, and I have her chart me away underneath. The scarp is mine now, its node held, its ancient stone folded into my walls, and holding it, I can open it to my sight. There is a stair down through the absorbed ruin that no collapse made, a clean descending shaft the system tucked behind the fortress, hidden behind the same kind of refusal screen it bricks over a function, and I take it with Dane a half step behind me and her brass glass throwing a thin survey light ahead of us both. The deeper we go, the quieter it gets. Above us, the wastes are never silent, always the grind of wind over slag, the far noise of armies, the low hum the board keeps under everything. Down here, all of that stops at a hard line, and below it the air goes still, cold, very old. Dane says her survey shows no weather, no node shift, no warden. Nothing her sight has ever charted, only the seam getting wider the lower we go. Her fear stays careful, the fear of a surveyor past every map she owns. My own sight does the opposite, sharpening with every step while her glass goes dim, and that frightens me worse than the silence. The shaft around us did not fall. Its courses run true under their rubble. The joints sit clean where a real collapse would have sheared them, and the weight of the entire scarp comes down through members placed by a hand that knew exactly where it wanted the weight to go. This is order wearing a costume of chaos, and I am the lone lord on the board trained to notice the costume. We come out of the shaft into a space the survey light cannot find the far wall of, and I stop because the floor under my boots tips the world all the way over. It is dressed stone, fitted, level, a foundation slab laid flat and bound at the joints, running farther into the dark than Dane's glass can throw. No domain in the Bonemark has a floor like this. The wastes are rust over slag over broken country, dirt all the way down, and here under the oldest ruin in the region is a made surface, engineered to hold something enormous for a very long time. This language is one I know. The slab is laid in the structural grammar my own keep-right blueprints use. The same load lines, the same joint logic, the same method of bolting a foundation to bedrock. A surveyor sees a dead floor, an army lord sees stone. I see a colleague's work, poured from the same book the board handed me as a joke. I stay crouched longer than I mean to, palm flat on the cold stone. The slab was poured in lifts course over course, corrected as it rose. Twice my hand finds a place where the build steps a hair sideways. A join made good after a course came up wrong. The kind of fix a builder makes and then signs off on. A collapse does not correct its mistakes. Only a maker does that. I am kneeling on careful work built to last, work meant to stay unseen by everyone standing on it. Dane crosses the slab slowly, brass glass low, and tells me her survey will not resolve the room, that her sight slides off the edges of it and finds nothing to fix on. She asks what I see because my face has changed in the survey light. I do not lie to her. This is not a ruin, I tell her. The floor is a foundation, laid on purpose by something that builds the way the system teaches me to build, and the scarp above us was not a fortress someone fell out of. It was a structure someone raised and dressed up as a wreck. She is quiet for a long breath. Then she says, careful and exact, that if this is a foundation, then the thing it was poured to hold up is the whole of Gravewall, and maybe more than Gravewall. We follow the slab inward because the slab is the only thing the dark gives us a line to follow. The foundation is not a single room's footing. It is a network running under the killing floor in every direction. Columns of force set at intervals no random ruin keeps. All of it tied back to lines that drive straight and deep past anything Dane has ever charted. The Rustfields Basin, the 2 straight node lines, the Scarp Defenders, all of it belongs to the same hand. The wrongness I've been clocking since my second morning is not 3 wrongnesses. It is one structure, and I am finally standing on its floor. Then the survey light catches a wall, and on the wall there is a mark, and the mark is where my deduction hardens into fact. It is cut into the dressed stone at the height a builder cuts a maker's mark, low on the load-bearing face, the spot where structure carries the weight and the signature carries the blame. I have cut my own version into every keep I have raised since the rust fields, because the system makes a keepwright sign his work. This one is older than mine by an order I cannot measure, the same placement, the same grammar. Dane sees a glyph her survey cannot place. I see a colleague's signature, and under it, cut smaller, the thing that turns the whole board over. A class name. In the system's own hand. First Architects. There is more cut around the mark than the name. Beside the signature runs a builder's notation of what this foundation carries and where the weight is meant to go, and every line points inward to a distant center. The rating on the slab is not for a wall, a keep, or a city. It is for a vessel. The vessel is the center. We are the load. The floor I am kneeling on was poured to feed. For a long time I stand in front of that mark, and every wrongness I have filed across 2 lives finally closes into one answer. The Bonemark Wastes is not a world. It is a built thing, dressed in rust, slag, and broken country so 240,000 of us would wake inside it and never ask who poured the floor. The domain war is what happens inside the structure the first architects raised, and the lords are the load it was built to carry and spend. I say the next part out loud to Dane because saying it makes me believe it. This is an arena, and the killing is the crop. Dane follows my hand across the inward lines, and her survey catches the same distant pull. She names it before I can, the thing at the center, the place all of this is built to feed. We are quiet a while in the cold under Gravewall, and then she asks the question that has been sitting under both of us since the slab. If the wastes are an arena built to harvest lords, then the classes are not draws. They are roles the makers wrote, every one shaped to keep the harvest running, and she wants to know which role they wrote for me. I give her the answer the structure leaves, not the one I want. The keepwright was rated worst on purpose. The same hand that bricked the door over Mobilize and Fuse cut its signature into this floor. And now the thing it sealed is plain. Every other class is built to fight the Harvest's war and stay where the killing happens. A keepwright forced past the filed down line can leave it. That is why they buried the class at the bottom of the board and sealed its legs. The last piece is mine to carry. Kang's betrayal was real, his greed his own, but the arena needed me dead before I found this floor, and it spent the hand already reaching for a knife. The thing that killed me was bigger than one man. It was a structure protecting the door it could not afford me to find. The cold of it settles in slow, down here on the corrected work of the makers, and I let it. My first life does not become softer with the truth. It becomes aimed. The makers did not lose track of me. I was not too small to matter. They only spend that kind of trouble on someone standing near the door. Something answers. As the last piece locks, a line burns into my panel down in the cold dark. The first thing this floor has given me that is not a closed door. Blueprint site, deep mode. The room resolves beyond Dane's survey light, every column and line of force opening at once, then the grid under the whole region, then the long bend toward the distant center. My sight reaches past buildings now. What opens to me is the arena itself. Dane watches my face do whatever it does when the sight opens, and the answer lands on her without another word from me. She says, flat and certain in the cold, that her survey will never resolve this room but mine just did, and none of it comes out as defeat. A surveyor hands the lead to the better instrument and asks the only question that matters now that we both know what the bone mark is. What does a man do, she asks me, with the knowledge that his whole world is a slaughter pen with a nicer name? I tell her the only answer the floor leaves a builder. A pen has a center, and a foundation built by a colleague can be reached. I am going to follow the lines inward, bring a fortress that walks to the door they sealed, and see what breaks when it finally has to face me. I will not promise more than that. Reaching it is the work. We climb back up the clean, false ruined shaft toward the killing floor, and the noise of the waste comes back at the hard line where it stopped. Wind over armies over the low hum. All of it sounding thinner now that I know it is the noise inside a built thing. I stand my citadel up off the seam and turn its footing toward the open wastes, and Dane brings the brass glass up to chart the one route the new site and the old survey agree on. There is a single route to the center from here, she tells me. One causeway running out over a break in the foundation too deep for her glass to find a bottom to. A span the makers left is the only crossing toward the column the load lines feed. The ashen span. She reads it with the flat certainty she gives bad weather, unhappy and sure, and tells me nothing she has ever surveyed defends a place harder than the foundation defends that bridge. Then her glass catches the other thing, the one that is not the arena, and her voice shifts into the register she keeps for a threat that is a man and not a structure. The board is moving behind us. Kang Seoko has gathered what is left of his fractured block, she reads, and he has not gone home to lick the wound I dealt him at the scarp. He has gone to ground with a native power her survey has only ever charted at the edges, something old and rooted that was here before any lord woke. Together the two of them are turning back toward me, with the cold patience of a man who told me to my face that he would understand how I knew, and then make me pay for it. The brother I called brother is coming for revenge, and he has found something in the wastes to bring with him. I aim my striding citadel at the ashen span and start at wading toward the one causeway that crosses to the center of the cage, with the surveyor's wagons in its shadow and a maker's mark at my back. Behind me, Kang gathers his revenge, and ahead of me the Foundation guards its only bridge. For the first time in 2 lives, I am not walking toward a node or away from a death. I am walking toward the door the makers tried hardest to wall off. The ashen span begins where the Foundation stops pretending to be ground. My striding citadel comes off the open wastes onto a lip of dressed stone that runs out over a break too deep for Dane's glass to find a floor in, and the first step onto it tells me everything the slab under Gravewall only hinted at. This is not a bridge across a canyon. It is a member, a single load-bearing span thrown across a deliberate gap, built as the only road to the center and rated to carry a fight. Dane rides the wagon inside the citadel's shadow, with the brass glass low, and the causeway frightens her more than the bottomless break under it. There is no weather on the span, no node to shift, no native power her survey can chart, only the bridge itself and the things standing on it. They are not lords or soldiers. They are part of the road, spaced where the road wants reinforcing, larger cousins of the gray shapes at Gravewall. She has surveyed the edges of the waste for 40 domains and never charted a defense that was the road. I tell her flat that I have twice now, and that this time the whole crossing is made of it. The first warden waits 100 meters out where the span widens at a pier, fitted stone and old Ferrocrete grown into the shape of a sentry, without a face or a banner. Deep mode opens it clean. No lord, no nerve, no supply line, no fear. Autonomous architecture, raised by the first architects to take apart anything crossing toward the center. The only language it answers is structure, and the only way past it is to outbuild it in the breath we are in arm's reach. The seam under Gravewall stands up in front of me as proof. The architects left one road to the center, then made it a road armies cannot use. A road with no node to hold and no ground to retreat across. A fortress that walks can cross or die trying. That is why they sealed my legs, and that is why I set my citadel onto the span instead of turning back. So I try. The first warden comes off its pier when my footing crosses a line cut in the stone, and it does not charge as a soldier charges. It begins taking the causeway apart in front of me, members of the bridge lifting into reaching arms. I drive the citadel forward into it, my walls against its reach, sub-towers swinging into joints, while it levers into my seams. Auto repair knits my courses shut almost as fast as the warden tears them. Almost. Standing still is the one thing this causeway punishes, so the citadel keeps walking. I drive it straight through the warden's reach and out the far side of the pier, and the sentry cannot follow, because it is the road, and a road does not move. Dane charts the next pier through the glass and gives me the spacing, and the spacing is the whole problem of the gauntlet in one line. The wardens are set close enough that I clear one straight into reach of the next, no gap long enough to stand the citadel down and let my corestone recover. The makers did not need any single warden to stop a walking fortress. They only needed the row to grind one down somewhere in the middle. With the first pier behind me, I set my footing on the next course and walk into reach of the second. The crossing turns into the longest single act of either of my lives, a march measured warden by warden instead of step by step, and somewhere in the grind of it something gathers on the road behind me. The board shows it before Dane catches it through the glass, a cluster of small heat at the lip of the span, where the causeway meets the wastes, a knot of lords gathering at the one place the Foundation lets them gather, and for a bad moment I take it for Kang. The cluster is not Kang at all. It is the beaten ones. They are refugees, and they are following my city. Dane reads them off the lip of the span and tells me what her survey finds. A thin column of broken lords coming up out of the wastes behind us. The ones whose domains the domain war already ate. Whose armies routed and left them landless. Whose nodes a stronger block stripped while they ran. They have no soldiers left, or too few to hold a node, and nowhere on the killing fields to go. And so they have done the one thing no lord on the board has ever done before. Each of them has stopped running from the thing that walks and started running toward it. The board has spent a year teaching every lord to fear the freak whose buildings move. These ones have lost enough that fear has burned off them, and what is left underneath is the plain arithmetic of survival. That a fortress which holds a node with no troops and walks out of any trap is the safest place in the Bonemark to stand, if it will let you stand in its shadow. I let them. There are no soldiers to guard them and no corestone to spare on walls for them, but a citadel's shadow costs me nothing. And a column of beaten lords trailing my footing is the first thing in 2 lives that has ever wanted to be near a keepright instead of far from one. One of them opens a channel, a lord whose domain I watched fall to Kang's block a region back, and he does not ask for protection, because he has too much pride left to beg and not enough left to pretend. He tells me only that he has nowhere else, that the way behind is closing and the way ahead is mine, and that he would rather die in the shadow of a thing that walks over armies than on his knees in front of one more block. I tell him to keep his people inside the line my footing cuts, and trust the structure, the same thing I told Dane at Gravewall, and the old world gives the moment a shape. This is how a city starts, not with walls, with the first people who decide the walls are theirs. Then the rear closes, and it is Kang. Dane's glass catches his army where the wastes meet the span, the block he gathered out of his fractured alliance, and beside it the native power her survey only ever charted at the edges. Something old and rooted that was here before any lord woke, moving with him now in a shape her sight cannot fully hold. He cannot cross the causeway. The structure tells me as much, and so does he. An army lord on a span of dead stone, no node to hold, a row of wardens ahead, walks into the same trap the architects built for everyone who is not me, and Kang Seoko is too strong and too careful to march his soldiers onto a road that eats armies. So he does not cross. He does the other thing, the cruel and clever thing, and herds. What he does is drive the column onto the bridge from behind. His army presses the lip of the causeway where the beaten lords are still climbing up out of the wastes. The native power with him fouls the ground behind them, and the refugees have nowhere to go but onto the bridge, into my shadow, deeper out over the bottomless break. Kang cannot follow me across, but he can hound the whole column toward the wardens faster than I can clear them, pushing a crowd of broken lords up against the back of a fortress that is already grinding forward warden by warden with no corestone to spare. His play comes clear to me, cold and complete, the same calculation that drove his withdrawal at Gravewall. He cannot take the span from me, so he means to break my crossing by overloading it, to pack a panicking column against my rear while the wardens chew my front, and let the gauntlet do to me what his army cannot. The pressure lands all at once and from every side, a load failing when too many lines go at once. Ahead of me the wardens come thicker, the piers closer together as the causeway runs deeper toward the center, the load lines of the bridge passing my citadel hand to hand down a row of sentries with no gap between them. Behind me, Kang drives the refugee column up against my footing, hundreds of frightened landless lords with nowhere to stand but the road I am clearing, one warden at a time. Under all of it, the span itself begins to fail, because it was built to carry a fight and not a crowd, and the weight of the column plus the wardens tearing at its members, plus my own citadel grinding across it, is more than the courses behind me can hold. Dane reads it through the glass and her voice goes flat and certain, the register she keeps for the worst weather. The span is collapsing behind us, she tells me, course shearing off the bridge into the break a few hundred meters back, the road unmaking itself as fast as we cross it, and the route she is charting me forward is breaking under the column even as she draws it. She charts it anyway, and that is the thing I will carry out of the ashen span whatever else it costs me. A surveyor who has walked off the edge of every map she owns, mapping a road that is coming apart under the people she is routing across it, calling me the line warden to warden a half step before each pier, while the courses behind shear away into a dark her glass cannot find a bottom to. Her sight is the only thing keeping the column from packing onto a stretch of span that is about to fall, and she spends it without stopping, picking the load-bearing line across a failing bridge for a crowd of strangers, because that is simply what we do for each other now. I drive the citadel forward on the route she draws, the wardens ahead, Kang behind, the road dissolving under all of us, and somewhere in the middle of that grinding crossing my corestone runs to a stub, and the citadel slows, and the thing the makers bet on begins to happen. Clearing the wardens warden by warden, with a column on my back and a bridge falling under me, is not a thing I can do. Not as I am, and not as separate buildings, each one holding alone, each one grinding its own load down to nothing while the road takes the rest. So I stop fighting the span as a fortress, and start solving it as a lord with a city to save. Every win since the morning my tower walked has been one building at a time, and the makers built this gauntlet to grind exactly that shape down. Deep mode opens my citadel, the refugees' broken keeps, and the failing road under all of us into one problem. The old foreman's question surfaces again, the one no keepright was supposed to ask. What happens if every structure stops being separate? The refugees are the thing that makes the answer possible, and I see it the moment the column packs against my footing. They are landless, but they are not empty-handed. A beaten lord still carries the bones of what he had, the foundation stubs of a fallen keep, a half-raised wall, the scrap of a domain the war did not finish eating. As they crowd into my shadow, their broken structures crowd in with them, 100 ruined buildings pressed up against my citadel with nowhere to stand, but where I stand. My blueprint sight in deep mode catches all of it at once, my fortress and their wreckage, and the failing span under all three one tangled load that the maker's road is about to shear off into the break. The sealed branch the system has hidden from me since the rust fields, the one limb of the evolution tree walled behind a refusal screen, brightens the harder the road presses. The door is here. They filed it down for the same reason they filed down my legs. It is the last thing the makers did not want me to find on the way to the center. I push my will into it, as I force the watchspire's footing the first morning and the fuse the second, down past the refusal screen into the seam under it. And the order I give is not for one building to walk or two buildings to become one. The order is for all of them to become a thing that holds its load together. My citadel, the refugees' ruins, every course between them binding into a single structure that shares one foundation, so no wall on the causeway grinds down alone, and no warden faces one fortress it can wear away, because what stands on the road now is a city. The refusal comes up, as it always does at the doors the makers bricked over, and behind it the seam waits as is waited every time. I drive my last stub of corestone and the cold certainty of a man with nothing else to try against it. Then the door gives, and the panel prints the line brighter than anything this class has handed me. Function unlocked. Stride heart. The city bind. Below it, the thing it does, plainly, in the system's own hand. Fuse every structure I hold into one shared load, bind the followers' own buildings into it, and walk them all as a single moving thing. Stride takes hold across the whole column at once, and the ashen span has never carried a weight like it. My citadel, 100 broken keeps, and every refugee's last ruined wall, draw together into one bound structure. Reaching for one fortress, the wardens find a city instead. I walk the whole of it forward, and the road built to stop a single walking fortress has to face the thing the makers never believed could exist. The refugee lord who told me he had nowhere else speaks up while it happens, and his voice is the awe I have not let myself feel. He tells me his ruined keep is moving. The war did not destroy it, and I did not take it from him. It has been lifted into the thing my citadel has become, and carried, his fallen domain crossing the ashen span as part of a city. He asks me what I have made, because he has lost 2 homes to the domain war, and never once seen a home that could walk out of a trap with its people still inside it. I do not have a clean answer for him, because the thing is still binding even as I take its measure, but the old world hands me the word I have been circling since the column first packed against my footing. Stridehold, a city that walks. What my first life never reached and my second life was built to keep me from, seated here on a failing bridge out of my own citadel, and the wreckage of everyone the war already beat. Bound by a door the makers filed down and I forced open under the worst load either of my lives has carried. I walk Stridehold off the far end of the ashen span as the last courses behind us shear into the break, and the wardens stand their stations on a road that has nothing left to defend, because the city is already past them, and the bridge is already gone. We come out onto Mortwall's plain, a flat hard stretch of the foundation under a low slag gray sky, and the plain is not empty. Dane reads it through the glass before my structure sight finishes the shape of it, and her voice is the flat certain register she keeps for the worst of it. 2 forces are waiting where the span meets the plain. King Syoko's army has come around the long way the foundation allows an army to come, his block and the rooted power both, drawn up on the open ground to meet the thing they could not catch on the bridge. And behind them, set into the plain itself, a fortress city, static, entrenched, enormous, a native lord's seat that has held this ground since before any of us woke. Walls that do not walk waiting for a city that does. I stand Stridehold up off the edge of the plain with 100 beaten lords bound inside its walls and a surveyor charting the field at my shoulder. And now I do what I have to do to keep the ground my people are standing on. Down goes the first foundation. Then up comes the first true wall of the city the span just named. Greystone coming up out of the hard plain to face the army and the fortress both. The opening course of the young Stridehold set down in the open where the whole board can read it. The wardens are behind me, the bridge is gone, and the only road left is the one through Mortwall. Kang has found his ground at last. The static fortress lord has found a thing that finally tests his walls, and I have learned, across 2 lives, that the work worth doing always waits on the far side of the door they tried hardest to keep shut. So I face the plain, the wall goes up, and the siege that Mortwall was built to be begins. Mortwall is the first structure since I came back that frightens me as a building and not as a man. I stand Stridehold up off the lip of the plain, with its first true wall freshly raised, and deep mode brings the fortress city into focus. Its footings are driven so deep into the made floor that they have become part of the slab, course on course of static strength, rings inside rings, every line engineered to stand exactly where it stands and dare the world to come take it. Mortwall has cornered itself on purpose for so long that the cornering has become its strength. Dane charts the field off the wagon while I take in the walls, and between her survey and my structure sight the shape of the trap fills in, because it is a trap with 2 jaws and they were not made by the same hand. The near jaw is King Syoko. His army is drawn up on the open ground between me and the fortress, the block he salvaged out of his fractured alliance, and the old-rooted native power her glass still cannot fully hold, ranged across the plain to meet the city they could not catch on the bridge. The far jaw is Mortwall itself, the static fortress lord's seat, walls that do not walk waiting behind Kang for a city that does. Kang cannot take Stridehold in the open. He proved that to himself at the Scarp and again on the span, so he has driven me onto the one stretch of plain where a fortress that has not moved an inch in an age can finally do his work for him. He is the hammer. Mortwall is the anvil. The column of beaten lords bound inside my walls is what they mean to crush between them. The refugees are inside Stridehold's bound courses now, 100 ruined keeps, and half-raised walls fused into my city by the Strideheart I forced open on the bridge. For the first time since the Rust Fields, I am not defending a single fortress. I hold a city full of people who decided the walls were theirs, and I lay the opening foundations of the siege with that fact under every course. Stridehold holds together, or it does not hold at all. The siege opens the way Kang opens everything, with a generosity that is really a knife. He opens the channel before his army moves, warm and reasonable in the register I have learned to distrust. There is no shame in it, he tells me, that the freak who builds walking castles has had a remarkable run, but the run ends on a plain in front of a fortress that has outlasted 100 lords who thought they were clever. He offers me the same thing he offered the Lonely Keep right before, a place under his banner. My building trick put to work for the block that is going to win the domain war anyway. My followers spared if I bend the knee now and save everyone the trouble. Words are a courtesy he has not earned. My answer is a second wall. Kang's army moves while the wall rises, larger than it was at Gravewall, swollen with lords who flock to the strong horse after the scarp. The rooted native power fouls Dane's survey and lends his line a strength that is not quite an army's, but supply still stretches behind it, and fear still runs under the bravado. Kang has numbers, a rooted ally, and a static anvil at his back. What he does not have is Stridehold. The first assault comes exactly as my memory swore it would. Kang's hammer swinging while Mortwall's anvil holds, his army rolling forward across the open ground, to pin my city against the fortress city's guns. I do not let Stridehold be pinned, because pinned is the death I came back from, twice. The whole bound thing walks sideways along the plain instead, the entire city moving at once on the shared load Strideheart binds. My citadel and the column and the followers' ruins striding together, so that Kang's charge closes on the ground where my walls were, and finds them 100 meters on. His line overruns an empty stretch of plain and has to wheel, and in wheeling across the open ground in front of the fortress it turns its flank to me. So I find the flank on the board and walk a span of Stridehold's outer wall into it, a moving rampart that splits his charge in two, and pins half of it against Mortwall's own outer ring. The static fortress the native lord built to crush me is suddenly a wall pinning Kang's own soldiers in place, while my city walks free of both. Dane's glass tracks the field while I work it, and her voice carries the awe she has stopped trying to hide, because she has surveyed 40 domains of armies grinding against walls, and never once charted the walls doing the grinding. She tells me the static fortress has not adjusted, that in the whole exchange Mortwall has not moved a single course, has not repositioned a wall or shifted a gun, has only stood and fired from the lines it was poured into before any of us woke. A living seat would have flexed to the city walking circles around it. This one cannot, and the not cannot is the first crack of light in the whole bad shape of the plain. I keep it where I keep everything that might save my people. The fortress city is the strongest static thing on the board, and it is exactly as strong as the ground it refuses to leave. Then Mortwall speaks, and the voice that comes through the channel is not the native lords that Dane charted, because there is no native lord, and the discovery of that is what turns the whole plain over under me. The voice is tired in a way no soldier gets tired, the flat, worn-down tone of a man who stopped counting his years a long time ago, and the first thing he tells me is that he knows what I am. Not the joke name, not the freak with the walking castles, not any of the tags the board hung on me. He names me Keepright, naming his own reflection, and he tells me I am the first one to reach this plain since he did. I go back over the fortress with that single line running under it, and everything I thought I was looking at rewrites itself. Mortwall is not a native seat. Its walls are laid in the grammar of my own blueprints. The same colleague's hand that surfaced under Gravewall, raised here into a whole city and driven so deep into the foundation that it could never walk again. The strongest static fortress on the board was raised by a man who could once make his buildings move. He tells me the rest himself, because he has waited a very long time to tell it to someone who can understand it. Once he was a Keepright drawn last on his own board, mocked the same laugh, raided the same dawns. He found the seam, forced a building to walk, gathered beaten lords and crossed toward the spindle. Then the architects broke him, and the breaking is the part he wants me to understand before I throw my city at his walls. Mortwall is not a fortress a Keepright raised. It is a Keepright a fortress was raised around. The deepest ring holds a man fused into his own walls so completely that I cannot find the line where the lord ends, and the structure begins. When he reached their door, the makers did not kill him. They drove his legs back into the floor, turned his city into a static seat, and set him on the only plane before the spindle as the last gate. He is not the native power Kang allied with. He is the thing the architects made out of the man I am trying to become. The path ends in this chair, he tells me. And he is not threatening me when he says it. He is warning me, and the warning is worse than any threat the day has thrown. His fortress walked toward the spindle the same as mine walks now, sure that being the one piece that could move made him the one piece that could win. And he reached the door. The architects offered him what they offer everyone who reaches it, and when he refused them, they did not erase him, they kept him, because a broken breach path lord makes a better gate than any warden they could pour. His mobility, the strength that defined him, they took, and made him an anvil. They set him here to be the proof to the next one that the road ends not in death but in this, fused into a static seat on a plane, firing on the next moving city to come out of the gauntlet, since firing on it is the only verb they left him. The last thing he tells me is the count. He has held this gate longer than I have been alive in either life, and put down every Keepright who reached this plane before me. There have been more of us than any ranking will ever count. Each one sure he was the first. Each one fused into the floor a little deeper to make him stronger when he ground the next one down. I do not argue the thesis at him. He is not wrong about the road. Standing across the plane, he is living proof that reaching the center is not the same as winning there. Dane watches my face in the survey light, and she has seen enough bad floors by now to know the difference between a problem and a mirror. What stands across the plane from me is the second kind. He is what I could become, finished into a chair he cannot rise from on a plane he can never leave. For one long breath on the open ground, with Kang's hammer wheeling for a second charge and the broken predecessor's voice still in the channel, I let the cold of it land all the way I have learned to let these things land rather than bury them. I came back from one death certain the orthodox way was the trap, and mobility was the door. Here is the man who walked through the door and found the makers waiting on the other side of it with a chair. If I lose this plane, that is the best I can hope for. Kept and fused into a gate for the next fool who thinks his buildings walking makes him free. The architects do not waste a breach path lord, they use him. And the broken keeperite lands his closing argument, the case he has been building toward since he named me, that there is no winning move on this plane. The smart play is the one he should have taken, to stop walking, to let them fuse me into something soft and high they would call a throne. Because by reaching this ground I have already proven I am too dangerous to be left free and too useful to be erased. This chair waits for me whether I bend or not, he tells me. Broken or grateful is the only choice the makers ever leave a keeperite who walks this far. I tell him no. His whole fortress opens to me one more time. Rings, keep, man at the heart, and the answer sits in the footing. The thing the architects did to make him their perfect gate is the exact thing that makes him beatable. Mortwall cannot move. So I do to Mortwall what no army king could ever bring against it could do. I refuse to be where its guns are. Strideholt walks off the line of fire, sideways and forward across the plain, and Mortwall fires into the ground I left. The predecessor feels the arc closing and warns me it will not work. That every walking fortress before me ran out of corestone in front of his guns. He is right about them. I did not reach this plane as one fortress. Strideheart carries the cost across the whole of Stridehold, my citadel beside the 100 ruined keeps and every wall the followers brought. Auto repair knits the shared structure, while Mortwall fires into a target that is never where it aims. I close the arc. Strideholt's outer ring walks around Mortwall's static rings, and the fortress that pinned 100 lords to this plane becomes the thing pinned, guns facing inward at a city that has already surrounded it. Kang sees the plane turn and does the thing Kang always does when the math goes against him, the thing that got me killed. He pulls back. His hammer is already wheeling from the charge I split, half his block penned against Mortwall's outer ring by the wall I walked through it, and he does not throw the rest of his army into a grinder to save a warden the architects set here without him. He cuts the rooted force loose to cover his line and runs east toward the volcanic glow on the rim. I let him run. Chasing a fleeing army with Stridehold is a thing I cannot do. Cinderhold will have to be where I catch him. I leave Kang to his run and turn to the prisoner inside my clamp. The broken keeperite is mine now, surrounded, his guns facing a city he cannot break, and the easy play is to grind him down, absorb his fortress, and walk on with Mortwall's stone folded into Stridehold. I do not take the easy play. He is a keeperite who reached the center before me, and a man like that ground into rubble is only a Ferrocrete Hall. Freed, he is the only other being on the made floor who knows the door I am walking toward. So I do the thing the architects built Mortwall to prove was impossible. I pull the man out of his own walls. Deep mode finds the fused seam they drove through him to make the gate, and I push my will down that line, not to break him and not to absorb him, but to lift him out of the static seat they drove him into. The refusal throws up the same wall it throws at every brick door. I drive everything Strideheart has left against it until the seam gives. Mortwall lifts its footings out of the floor, something it has not done since the architects drove them in. The predecessor's voice changes into awe. He tells me his walls are moving, lifting out of the floor after all the years since the architects broke him, and he asks what I have done because he had stopped believing the legs could come back. His freed fortress draws into Strideheart beside the citadel, the column, and the 100 ruined keeps, not as a hall but as a lord who has walked this road before me. The board takes a breath as the last gate before the spindle stands up and joins the city it was built to stop. Then the panel prints the door the whole siege was built to open. Function unlocked, Stridehold proper. I stand Stridehold up off Mortwall's plain, with the broken keeperite stone in its walls, and the broken keeperite himself riding inside it, freed and folded into the only city on the board that walks. He tells me what he never got to do, that he reached the center alone, and they broke him alone. Dane charts the field clear and brings the glass up toward the rim, past Cinderhold's volcanic glow, past the seat Kang has fled to, and the masters waiting in it. A thin, hard light rises where no weather climbs and no node sits. The spindle. Close enough now to throw light over the rim of the world the makers built to hide it. I point Stridehold east towards Cinderhold, with 100 beaten lords and a freed predecessor bound inside its walls, and a surveyor charting the single road in toward the light, and I take the first slow, certain step toward the volcanic seat where Kang has gone to his masters, and the spindle's glow is already climbing past the rim. The brother who killed me once is running to the hand that always moved him. Behind my walls, the gate built to stop me is walking in my city now. And ahead of all of it, the center is finally close enough that its light clears the rim, the thing that built the board waiting at the end of the only road left. Cinderhold feels wrong before Stridehold is even off the last slope. I bring the city down the long fall of black glass toward Kang's volcanic seat, with the spindle's light climbing past the rim ahead of it, and the volcanic keep fails the shape it pretends to hold. It should answer only to the fire under it. Instead, every line bends inward toward the thin, hard light over the rim, and before I am within a mile of his gate, the truth is already waiting. Kang did not flee to a stronghold of his own. He fled to a door, and the door was theirs all along. The broken keeprite rides inside my walls now, freed off the plane and folded into Strideholt, and he tells me, flat and tired, that he knows this place. Not Cinderhold by name, but the grammar of it, the point where a structure turns into a mouth. He warns me that the volcanic seat is a costume cut on the pattern Gravewall wore, a thing dressed up as a man's fortress, so the man inside it would believe he held it. Dane charts the rim off the wagon and finds the same pull toward the spindle. We have walked off the edge of the war and onto the made ground of the thing that built it. The Harvest has a front office, and Kang has been keeping it. So I bring Strideholt to a stop on the black plain before Cinderhold's gate, and I do not raise a wall, because a wall is for an army and there is no army here. There is Kang, drawn up small and alone in front of his volcanic seat, with no block behind him, the rooted power cut loose, the alliance spent, just the man named in both my deaths standing at a door that was never his. And there is the thing behind the door, which speaks before he does. The first time across 2 lives I have heard the makers use a voice. No channel carries it. A lord's words come over the chat, and these rise through the foundation in the stone of my own city, making the broken keeprite flinch because he has heard them before. The first architects tell me, through Kang and around him and under him all at once, that they have been expecting the city that walks. No threat is in it and no boast. The greeting lands worse than any threat the day could have brought, because it means they are not surprised. It means I am exactly where they always knew Strideholt would end up. I work the seat while they speak, the same care I have spent on every load that ever meant to kill me, and the reading confirms what the voice is for. Kang's body moves at the front of it. His mouth makes some of the words, but the words are not his, and my deep mode sight finds the scene where the man ends and the architect's hand begins. The same fused line that ran through the predecessor on the plane, driven shallower here, a newer weld. They are wearing him. Not broken into a wall as they broke the man riding in my city, kept soft and useful, left standing. A mouth they speak the offer through because a mouth that wears my brother's face is the cruelest one they own. I let them speak, since I have crossed a foundation to read this and will not flinch from the page now that it is open. A maker lays out a finished calc and hides not one line of it, because this is the part they want me to see. They confirm what the slab already told me. The bone mark is built, the domain war is a harvest, and the spindle is the vessel it feeds. They say it without shame, a craftsman describing a mechanism that works. They tell me about the keeprite next, and the broken man in my walls goes still because they say to me what they once said to him. The class was buried on purpose, its legs sealed out of housekeeping, because a harvest needs its livestock pinned where the killing happens. My first death was housekeeping too. Through my brother's mouth, they admit they nudged the hand already greedy for my node and closed the trap early, because a breach path lord cannot be left alive long enough to find the slab under his feet. None of it comes out as a confession. It is a mechanism explained to an apprentice they expect to understand. I stand in front of that and do not give them the flinch they are reaching for. They poured this arena, wrote the harvest, and spent my first life as a course laid wrong and pulled out. All of that is true, and all of it is a situation, not the verdict. Their account leaves out what I do now that I am standing on their floor, and that answer is mine. Then comes the offer, the kind a master makes to the journeyman he means to keep. They call everything I have done qualification, not rebellion, and offer me the chair over the whole bone mark, not the broken seat they drove the predecessor's legs into. A throne, real every other lord under my hand, every node mine to grant or take, the war run on my word instead of against me. All they ask is that I stop, set my city down, never breach the spindle, and let the harvest run under me instead of through me. The offer is enormous and precisely shaped. It knows the hunger of a man buried twice at the bottom of the rankings, the sandcastle, the old nickname, the foreman with no army in a city that finally made the board afraid. The architect's own hand reaches down to set me over the same board that laughed me into a grave. That makes the offer more dangerous than the raiders and more dangerous than the betrayal, because it does not come to kill me, keeping me as its entire purpose. And then they expose Kang, not as a confession but as a sweetener, a master showing the journeyman the cheaper tool. The brother I trusted was their hand because his hunger already leaned that way. They only had to let it run when they needed me dead, and it ran exactly on schedule. This life they bought him again with the same coin. Dominion dangled in front of the same appetite. The makers show me that because they want me to understand I am being offered the thing they only ever rented to him. I face Kang Soko across the black plain with the whole truth standing between us at last. The warmth is gone. The charm that courted me in my first life has burned down to the hunger the architects named. The appetite that took their coin twice and called it ambition both times. He does not deny it. I tell him through the channel, and not through their stone, the one thing I have carried for 2 deaths without the standing to say. He did not beat me. The architect spent him on me twice, and that same hand is wearing him now while it offers me the chair it once dangled at him. Kang answers, and his voice is his own for the length of it, the architects letting him have the words because the words serve them. He tells me I am a fool to read the offer as a trap, that I have spent 2 lives clawing up from the bottom of a board to be handed the top of it, and that I am standing in front of the only hand that ever offered me anything and calling it an enemy. By his telling, he took their coin both times with his eyes open. He understands the harvest and rules inside it and counts himself the wiser for it over me, who would break it and die free, and the difference between us was never loyalty or honor, but only that he was willing to be useful and I am not. The whole speech tries to make it a choice between his clear-eyed appetite and my stubborn pride, and he is good at it. He was always good at it, and the worst of it is that he is not entirely wrong about the appetite. Everything I ever lacked is in the offer, and it is reaching the exact place in me it was built to reach. I refuse, and there is no heroism in the refusing. Only a foreman who cannot lie about where the weight goes. A kingdom inside a slaughterhouse is still livestock with a nicer pen, and I say it once, flat, into their stone and across the plain to Kang. If I take their chair, I rule the harvest while the harvest still runs. They are handing me a softer place to stand while it feeds, and I have seen enough of their hand to know the offer is the pen and not the door. The predecessor writing in my walls is the proof under the offer. They offered him the same chair when he reached the door, and when he refused, they kept him fused his legs into the slab, and set him on the last plane as a gate. The offer sorts a breach path lord into the use they have for him. Soft and seated if he takes it, hard and fused if he does not. In either way, standing where they put him, never walking again. I would not rule the cage. Sitting in it, I would only be the most comfortable load it ever carried. So the choice sets clean in front of me. Breach the spindle or rule the cage. I tell them no by pointing my city at the center, and meaning it, and the moment the refusal lands, the makers stop wearing the master's patience. A journeyman who will not be kept is not a journeyman anymore. He is a flaw in the floor, and they have always known exactly what to do with one of those. Their first strike comes up through the foundation along the same lines the voice rode. It is not an army. The made ground under Cinderhold's plane answers their will and turns on the one structure standing on it that they did not build. Every load line under Stridehold reverses at once, the slab reaching through my footings to fuse the city where it stands and make me the next gate. Killing the city is not the aim. They are trying to seed it. They sealed the city bind against a lone keep right and never planned for the foundation itself to strike a city. A lone keep they could seat. Stridehold gives them no single footing to drive down. The pull spreads across the citadel, the 100 ruined keeps, the freed predecessors' rings, and every wall the followers brought, too wide for the slab to seize in one place. I let the strike come, find where it grips, and turn that grip into motion. The system gives me the door the whole confrontation was built to open. Function unlocked, breach ram. Stridehold becomes a city built to drive into a strike, its bound mass gathering behind one moving front, and aiming down the lines toward the place they all drain to. The predecessor feels it from inside my walls, and his tired voice changes into awe. He reached the center as one fortress and they seated him. Now he watches a city take the floor's own strike and turn it into the run at the door. The maker's strike fails to seat me, and their patience goes out of the stone. I do not wait on the plane for what comes next. Stridehold turns off Cinderhold's gate in my hand and points its whole bound front toward the thin hard light over the rim. Behind me, Kang breaks for his master's door, the rooted power gathering back to him, his block and every army lord still answering the board's call streaming toward the one road a driving city has to cross. Ahead of me, the wardens rise again. The board takes a breath to understand that the worst draw refused the throne, and then every faction in the bone mark turns toward the center to stop the one city that can reach the spindle. I drive Stridehold into the gap before it closes. The last span between the cage and its center is less a road than a wound the architects left open, and I drive Stridehold into it with every faction on the board closing at my back. The city drives now where it once walked, breach ram gathered behind one moving front, and ahead of me the spindle climbs brighter with every step, a column of pale fire rising where no weather rises and no node sits. Behind me, the board takes its breath and lets it out as a chase. Every faction that ever called me a joke sees the city that refused the throne aimed at the door their masters built the arena to guard. Kang's block gathers east of me, the native power folding back into his line, and past him the other blocks turn toward the same road, because the board has finally agreed on one point. The city that walks is the threat they all share. The chat that named me last lord in Sandcastle Mason is not mocking now. It is watching the count fall with every army crossing to reach me, and the board posts a marshalling and an erasure warrant on a single lord, with no precedent anyone can remember. Somewhere on the span the mockery turned to fear. and fear is headed for the same door I am. Co. Dane charts the convergence off the wagon with the brass glass low against the jolt of a driving city. The road is failing as we cross it, she tells me, and the makers are unmaking the ground under my front. Her survey marks where the made ground still holds and where it has already begun to fall, keeping Stridehold aimed at the center instead of into the breaks opening across the plain. Without her glass, I drive blind down a road coming apart under its own weight. The refugees hold the walls while I drive. 100 ruined lords ride Stridehold's bound courses now, landless, armyless, folded into the city on the bridge, and they do not man the ramparts at all. They are the wall. When the failing ground drops out from under one stretch of my front, the bound city carries the strain across the rest, and the front does not fall. I feel the drive run through all of them at once. The 100 shared courses, the free predecessors' rings, Mortwall's lifted stone, and I push toward the light. The first wardens lift off the road ahead, the foundation peeling its own strength up off the made floor to stand in my front. I do not slow for them. Stridehold takes the first warden full against its leading wall and does not break stride. The next one rises, and I aim the drive at it instead of around it. The refugees feel the impacts in the courses they hold, and they hold them. Riding in my walls, the predecessor tells me, tired and amazed, that he ran this gauntlet alone and never imagined a city could take the strikes across 100 shared courses and keep driving. Then Kang makes his last stand, and he stakes it on the single thing that has never once stopped me, his whole army drawn up between me and the door. His block comes onto the road behind the wardens, larger than it was at Gravewall, larger than it was on Mortwall's plain, swelled with every lord who decided the safe bet was the strong horse, the old-rooted force moving through his ranks in the shape Dane's survey still cannot fully hold. His channel opens before his line moves, and the warmth in it is the same knife it has always been. The brothers register I learned before to distrust. The run ends here, he tells me, on the last span, that a freak who builds walking castles has had a remarkable rise, but a rise is not a reign, that the army at his back is the largest the Bonemark has ever fielded, and it has come for the one node the board agrees must fall. Even now he offers me the place under his banner he offered the lonely keep right before. My followers spared if I set the city down and bend. Words would only give him a shape to argue with. My answer is the drive, the whole bound front swinging onto the line his army is standing on. His charge comes exactly as the old life swore it would, the hammer swinging, his line rolling forward across the failing ground to pin my city against the wardens and the breaks. I do not let Stridehold be pinned. The whole bound front meets his line head-on, the breech ram driving into the densest part of his army, where the rooted power knots his ranks together. Its leading wall splits the charge where it is thickest, and the two halves of his army wheel into ground that is dropping out from under them. A span of my outer wall walks into the gap, and pens half his block against a break in the road they cannot cross. Dane charts the field turning through the glass while I work it, and her voice carries the awe she stopped trying to hide somewhere on the ashen span. She tells me Kang's line has lost its shape, that the rooted power knot in his ranks is dragging them into the breaks when my drive splits them off it. I walk another span of wall through the second half of his block, and the largest army the Bonemarch ever fielded becomes two penned halves on either side of the city, driving clean between them toward the light. Kang sees the math go against him and does the thing Kang always does when it does, the thing that named my first death. He pulls back. His hammer is already wheeling from the charge I split. Half his block penned against the breaks by the walls I walked through it, and he does not throw the rest of it into a grinder for a road his own masters are unmaking anyway. He cuts that native power loose to cover his line and runs east toward the volcanic glow at the rim, toward the door his masters keep. I do not chase him. A city is slow and a routed block is fast. The door will catch him for me. His army breaks on the last span, but the man himself runs clean off the plain ahead of my drive. I let him go because the reckoning is not on this road. It waits at the center, at the door, where King Syoko has gone to ground one last time, and I drive my city in after him, toward the light. Then the road runs out, and the thing I drive at is the door itself. The spindle stands at the end of the failing span, a column of pale fire footed into the thickest foundation the makers ever poured. It is the vessel, and every line in the arena drains to it. A breech ram can buckle its face, but cracking it asks for more. Stridehold has to strike with its whole bound mass behind a single point, and that strike needs an anchor that will not give. The answer does not close with corestone. The spindle's foundation is the made floor itself, and a footing driven into ground the architect's control is a footing they pull the instant my ram leans on it. The breach needs an anchor outside their floor, and there is exactly one thing on my city footed on ground they never poured. Dane reaches the same answer before I say a word, because ground the makers cannot reach is her trade and not mine. A surveyor's domain is not a node and not a keep. Her map site is footed outside the floor she charts, and her domain core is the single anchor on my whole driving city the makers cannot pull. Neither of us says what spending it means. She tells me what spending it costs, flat and certain, the same register she gives the weather. The domain core is the map site. There is no spending the one and keeping the other. If she anchors the breach, the glass goes dark for good. She has been my eyes since the rust fields. After this drive, she will ride a city she can no longer read. I do not have a speech for it, and she does not want one. And that is the whole of what we are and have been since I pulled her out of the wreck of a mapping run in the rust fields. The wagon comes up to the leading course of the breach ram, into the shadow of the front where no soldier could ever reach her, the place I have kept her since the first keep walked, and she sets the brass glass down on the dressed stone of the city she charts. Her eyes do not come to me when she does it. One last time she reads the anchor point off her own domain, the spacing, the load, the single footing the breach has to land on, and she tells me where to drive the last survey her site will ever give. And then she gives the core. I feel it go down through Stridehold's leading course all at once, her whole map site draining out of her and into the stone. The one anchor on the made floor footed on ground the makers do not own. The glass on the dressed stone goes dark and stays dark. No sound comes out of her. Her hand comes down flat on the cold stone of the wall beside the dead glass, on the city she can no longer read, and there it stays. And that is the only telling of it either of us will ever do. The anchor takes, and Stridehold drives to its peak, all the bound mass of the citadel, the 100 keeps, Mortwall's freed rings, and the predecessor stone gathered behind one moving point. The breach ram lowers its whole front toward the base of the spindle, and I put the city into the single point Dane's last survey set. Stridehold strikes the spindle. The center cracks. It buckles instead of shattering, pale fire opening from base toward rim, and the whole made floor of the arena shudders with it. From inside my walls, the predecessor's tired voice breaks, because he reached the center alone as one fortress and they broke him before he ever struck it. But the crack runs only part way. The spindle holds, buckled, seamed, leaking its pale fire across the failing span, and the drive of one city is spent halfway home. And far beneath it, deeper than the slab the architects laid for the spindle, something that is not the first architects begins to stir. Whatever wakes under the seam I opened is the thing they built it all for, and it has just felt the first city on the made floor strike its vessel and crack it halfway. I stand Stridehold against the buckled spindle with the anchor still holding and the breach half made, and the floor of the entire cage trembles under the thing waking beneath the makers. The spindle stands cracked and holding in front of me, a seam of pale fire running up its column from base toward rim, and one blow left in my whole city to finish what the first one started. Dane's anchor still grips. The breach ram is spent. Under all of it, the thing beneath the first architects rises. The first strike opened the seam, and the last strike has to follow it, so I do not aim the last blow at the thickest part of the vessel. I aim it at the seam, the place where pale fire already leaks and the buckled foundation is fighting itself. The spindle is not a wall to smash. It is a structure already straining to come apart. All it needs is to be told exactly where. I tell it. Every course gathers behind a single point one more time, footed on the anchor Dane set and pointed at the seam running up the side. The system burns the final line into my panel, and I put the whole anchored mass of Stridehold into the cracked line instead of the solid stone. The last blow lands exactly where the foundation already wanted to fail. The spindle breaks, not the slow buckle of that first strike, where the foundation gave a little and held. This is the give of a load path cut at the single member that carried it, the seam tearing open from base to rim all at once, the pale fire of the vessel pouring out through a column split into two halves, each leaning away from a center that has stopped holding them. The made floor of the arena lurches whole under the break, every load line that drained inward to feed the center snapping slack at once, an age of lords cut off at the vessel it was poured into. I feel it go through Stridehold's anchored footing and up into my teeth, the same travel that keep coming down took through me in my first life, except this time the thing collapsing is the cage, and I am the hand on the load path that called the fall. The harvest ends in the single breath the spindle stops draining the floor, faster by far than the days my foreknowledge always measured things in. My deep mode sight catches the load lines dying one after another across the whole foundation, the inward pull toward the center going still, and the board in my eye does what it has never done since Lordfall. The Lord count stops falling, that soft number sliding downward every hour since Lordfall's first morning. Every tick another spearless fool or beaten army lord drained into the vessel, holds for once, and then it does something I have no category for. It holds, and the names stop graying out, and across the dead floor of the Bone March, every lord still breathing is suddenly a lord the harvest can no longer reach. And it is not only mine that ends. Breaking the spindle does not free Stridehold alone. It frees the 100 refugees bound in my walls, the predecessor riding inside me, the beaten lords scattered across the wastes, every survivor still breathing under the Bone March sky. The board lights up region by region as the load lines die. every domain dropping off the harvest at once. Then the chat that named me Sandcastle Mason fills not with mockery and not with math, but with Lord's understanding they are not going to be erased. I stand the city up off the cracked center and let the size of it land. The count that survived to this breath is a fraction of the number that woke at Lord fall, but it is a fraction that has stopped shrinking, and every name still on it belongs to a Lord the makers can no longer drain. The thing that did it is footed on the anchor of a surveyor who can no longer see and bound out of the broken keeps of the people the war already beat. The joke the region laughed at on the first morning broke the cage. The predecessor's tired voice gives out entirely. He reached this center alone as one fortress, and they broke him before he ever struck it. And now the blow he never got to throw has landed through a city he never thought to build. He tells me the feeding he was made to guard is over. I give him no thesis. The center is cracked open, the count has stopped falling, and that is enough. Then I turn all of my attention to the one figure on the dead floor who fed the vessel by choice. The cage is broken and the count is held, but the reckoning King Soko has earned across 2 lives is still standing at the door he ran to, and I have not driven a city to the center of the world to leave that load unread. Kang Soko is where he always goes when the math turns against him, drawn up small and alone at the foot of the broken spindle, with no block behind him. The native force he cut loose on the last span scattered into the breaks. The largest army the Bonemarks ever fielded gone. He ran to his master's door and the door is cracked open and leaking the fire of a harvest that no longer runs. And the makers who wore him at Cinderhold are not speaking through him now, because a hand does not waste a voice on a tool it can no longer spend. Now he stands at the foot of the thing he guarded across 2 of my deaths with nothing left to guard it with. Just the man. And I bring Strideholt to a stop in front of him and take the measure of him. Seam and structure both. His last message arrives and the warmth has gone out of it entirely, because the warmth was always the costume, and the costume has no use on a broken floor. Now he tells me I have won a thing that cannot be held, that breaking the harvest feeds no one, that I have freed 100,000 lords onto a dead floor that has no center anymore, no rule over them, and nothing left to make them follow the city that ended the only game any of us were given. By his telling, I traded the one structure that fed us all for the freedom to starve under an open sky, and the chair I refused at Cinderhold was the only sane answer on the whole board. The man is good at it, the brother who courted the lonely keepwright with exactly the words the lonely keepwright needed to hear. Even now, harvest dead and army gone, he is reaching for the place in me that came back from a grave, hungry to be told the bottom of the board was not where I belonged. I do not give him the answer he is reaching for. What I tell him instead is flat. The one thing the broken floor has finally made true. The harvest is over. There is no domain war to field an army in, no node to take, no board to climb, no master left to sell himself to for rank. The man who lived by the army and the domain is standing on a floor where neither one matters anymore. And all I have to do is make sure it stays done. So I break him the only way that fits the man, which is not the way the board would expect, and not the way the grief of 2 deaths wants. A kill is the easy play, and grief does not garrison a node, so I do not crush him into rubble and absorb his stone. I lift the maker's hand out of him as I once lifted the predecessor out of his chair, not to free him into anything, but to leave him exactly and only himself. Then I take the 2 things that were ever King Syoko. My city walks his ground out from under him, and the war that fed his armies is dead. When I am done, he is alive, untouched, landless, armyless, finished. He understands it as it lands, and the understanding is the whole punishment. A kill he could spend his martyrdom in a chair he could rule from, but this leaves him nothing to be. He asks what he is supposed to do. I give him no answer because the answer is the one he gave me in my first life when he left me on the ridge and let the walls come down. Nothing at all. He gets to keep living on a dead floor with nothing to take and nothing to climb. A fixed thing that will only ever stand exactly where it stands. I leave him there and do not look back, then turn the city to the work a lord does when the war is over and the ground his people stand on is finally theirs to keep. Strideholt stands at the broken center of the bone mark with the feeding dead and the count held, and the lords come to it. The 100 refugees bound in my walls, the freed predecessor, the beaten lords scattered across the dead floor, all of them gather around the structure that ended what was meant to feed on every one of them. Strideholt becomes the first free city in the Bone Mark, a city that holds no node because there are no nodes left to hold. And Seodane makes it her home without a single word. The glass on the dress stone is still dark, her map sight spent into the anchor, and on the old board that would have made her one more landless lord on a dead plain. She does not go to the plain. The wagon that rode in the shadow of my front, since the rust field stays in the shadow of my front, and the dark glass remains on the city she can no longer read but will not leave. That she stays is all the telling either of us needs. The work after is the slow kind, the kind a foreman knows. Strideholt walks the dead floor of the Bonemarch, and the freed lords ride its courses. while the predecessor teaches me the parts of the road my foreknowledge never reached. The city that ended the harvest grows now that it is finally allowed to, slow and certain, never again pinned. I am Ju Hoyon, and Stridehold is the wasteland lord of all that is left of the bone mark, which is everyone the harvest did not get, and the dead floor it ran on. When the seam tore and the count held, I thought the broken spindle would open the one thing 2 lives of suffering ever pointed at, the way home. It does not. Stridehold stands over the vessel while pale fire leaks from base to rim, and where I expected a door onto the old world, the river, the crew, and the man who did not walk out, there is no door at all. The spindle was never a gate back to Earth. Past the broken center is a grid. The broken spindle opens onto a foundation that does not end. Course after course have made floor stretching beyond the one I cracked, and each course is a cage. My bone mark was a single one of them. Arena after arena spreads across the grid, each sealed floor with its own spindle, its own harvest, its own survivors bleeding inward to feed something beneath all of it. The first architects did not build the prison. They built one floor in it, and it is looking back. The thing far beneath the makers turns its attention up through the broken center toward the lone structure on the grid that just did what no piece in any cage was built to do. It is below the bone mark, below every arena, set above the first architects as a maker is set above the brick. The harvest was always for it, and it has just felt one cage break. I stand the city over the cracked center with the harvest dead behind me and the grid open ahead, the freed lords in my walls, the dark glass on the dressed stone, and the broken brother finished on the floor. There was never any going home. The bond mark was the first floor of a structure that runs past the edge of my sight, and the thing above the men who built it has just learned my city's name. So I point Stridehold at the torn seam, and the grid beyond it, and I take the first step off the only floor I have ever known.